Chapter 64. The people from the various sects looked on enviously as the people from the Hauran sword sect experienced a rare opportunity. The situation on the battlefield gradually changed. The people from the Hauran sword sect gradually gained the upper hand from their initial disadvantage. Moreover, during the course of the battle, they also discovered their own shortcomings. Their understanding of cultivation methods and martial techniques became deeper. Every move they made became smoother and smoother. Their strength also increased. 2 hours passed, and the people of the Hauran sword clan finally relied on the help of the delaying technique and pills to make the black cloud figure on the opposite side run out of energy and vanish, thus winning the battle. Everyone was exhausted, but in order to prevent any unexpected situations, they still forced themselves to look at the sky. At the same time, Yi Tianzong also destroyed the black cloud silhouette before him with a punch. Then he landed on the high platform and looked up at the sky. Yi Tianzong's actions undoubtedly meant that the battle was not over yet. This discovery caused everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. Before the people from the Hauran sword sect and the people from the various sects and forces who were watching from afar could think about it, the thick black cloud that covered a radius of 10 li in the sky changed again. The black cloud layer that covered a radius of 10 li suddenly expanded to cover a radius of 100 li. Then, the cloud layer churned as if something mysterious was brewing. Not long after, at the center of the churning cloud layer, which was above the high platform that Yi Tianzong was on, the cloud layer suddenly parted. Then, a giant eye that was 100 zhang in size appeared before everyone's eyes. What kind of eye was that? The giant eye's pupil flashed with a black and white light. It was supreme and noble, cold and emotionless. Everything in the world was no different from this black and white giant eye, the eye of heaven and earth. The moment they saw the giant eye, the information of the giant eye appeared in everyone's mind. The eye of heaven and earth represented the will of the world. It was supreme and had the authority to judge all living things in the world. It would not appear unless there was something or someone that had an important impact on the world. Seeing the appearance of the eye of heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong was overjoyed. As long as it appeared, it meant that the plan had a high chance of success. After the eye of heaven and earth appeared, it stared coldly and mercilessly at Yi Tianzong. Black and white light swirled in its eyes, as though it wanted to judge Yi Tianzong. Everyone was sweating for Yi Tianzong. Just by looking at the eyes of heaven and earth, they felt as insignificant as ants. Their hearts almost stopped beating, and they didn't have the slightest bit of courage or thought to resist. They didn't dare to imagine what kind of pressure Yi Tianzong, who was directly under the gaze of the eyes of heaven and earth. Looking up at the eyes of heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong would be lying if he said he wasn't nervous. He had seen the eyes of heaven and earth in his previous life, and it was far more powerful than the eyes of heaven and earth now. But now, he was powerless against the eye of heaven and earth before him. In the myriad of worlds, there were countless small worlds, middle worlds, and great worlds. Only the will of heaven and earth in the middle world and above could be revealed to the world through the existence of the eyes of heaven and earth. And after the middle world evolved into a great world, the will of heaven and earth would evolve into the Tao of heaven and reveal itself to the world through the existence of the eyes of heaven. When the profound spirit world was at its peak, it was a super middle world that was about to evolve into a great world. The will of heaven and earth was already relatively complete, although it encountered an unknown change later on, causing the world to be sealed and decline. Its relatively complete will of heaven and earth was not weakened because of this. Looking at the eyes of heaven and earth above him, Yi Tianzong made up his mind. He knelt down on one knee and said, "Supreme will of heaven and earth, as a living being born in this world, my sect and I have no intention of offending you. Our world has been continuously declining from its glory days due to a huge change in the seal. Now, all the martial artists have stopped at Wuzong and are unable to break through. If we allow this to continue, sooner or later, it will become a Dharma-ending age. At that time, the vitality of heaven and earth will be exhausted. Our world will also be completely destroyed, and you will also disappear. In order to change this outcome, my sect partners and I are willing to accept the will of heaven and earth and use the merit of saving countless living beings in exchange for the chance to break the seal. Let our world have a chance to live, reverse the decline, and return to its peak. Please have mercy on all living beings and give us a chance. Yi Tianzong's attitude was solemn and humble. He did not think that he could be equal to heaven and earth. Even if he was once a myth realm almighty who had traveled through many worlds, he was still an ant in the face of the weakened will of heaven and earth. There was nothing to be proud of. What Yi Tianzong did not know was that after the eyes of heaven and earth appeared, the scene of him talking to the eyes of heaven and earth miraculously appeared in the entire territory ruled by the Howren Sword sect. As long as one was in the Howren Sword sect's territory, everyone saw what Yi Tianzong said to the eyes of heaven and earth. After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, everyone in the Howren Sword sect, regardless of gender or age, including those from various sects, all knelt down at the same time. With a pious heart, they said in unison, "Please have mercy on us, will of heaven and earth, and give us a chance. Please have mercy on us, will of heaven and earth, and give us a chance." Everyone prayed to the will of heaven and earth over and over again. Their voices became louder and louder as they echoed in the world. Under the influence of the countless pious wishes of living beings and Yi Tianzong's words, the eyes of heaven and earth finally dispersed its power and returned to the state it was in when it first appeared. The eyes of heaven and earth did not disappear after dispersing its attack power. Instead, it stared at Yi Tianzong. While everyone was feeling nervous, a strange voice rang in everyone's hearts. There was no doubt about it. Everyone knew that it was the permission of the will of heaven and earth, and it was giving all living beings a chance to fight against the heavens. With the permission of the will of heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong could not help but rejoice. He continued, "Supreme will of heaven and earth, thank you for your grace. The seal of our world cannot be broken in one go. It needs to be done step by step. Please show us the seals that restrict us cultivators so that we can break through them. Let us accumulate enough power to break through the seals again until all the seals have been broken." Hearing Yi Tianzong's words, the eyes of heaven and earth gradually disappeared into the dark clouds. A while later it reappeared. However, compared to before, the eyes of heaven and earth that reappeared was tightly bound by countless black chains of runes of various thicknesses. Looking at the eye of the world that was bound by countless chains, everyone felt great palpitations and sorrow from the depths of their souls. They could not help but shed tears. However, what followed was endless hatred and humiliation. Who was it that dared to treat our world like this? Who was it that made our world like this? Who was it that sealed our world and cut off everyone's path forward? They did not know why the world had become like this, but they knew that they would not let go of the person who did this in the future. Yi Tianzong looked at the countless chains and felt extremely shocked and sorrowful in his heart. Then his heart was filled with boundless killing intent. Just Wuzong's breakthrough to Marquis will required him to go through 3 tests. If it was not for someone like Yi Tianzong and his identity, without a complete plan and preparation, there was no chance for him to pass these 3 tests. The people or creatures that sealed this world did not plan to leave any chance of survival. They had completely given up on the profound spirit world. In this world, Yi Tianzong had become a creature of the profound spirit world. How could he not have killing intent towards those people? Suppressing the killing intent in his heart, Yi Tianzong adjusted his state of mind. Then he looked at the outermost layer of thin chains that bound the eyes of heaven and earth. A realization rose in his heart. That should be the seal that prevented warriors from breaking through to Marquis Wu. Chapter 65. Yi Tianzong, who had found his target, stood up and looked at the thin chains with a serious expression. Although the chains were only as thick as a palm, they were still powered by the power of heaven and earth. Moreover, even though the chains were right in front of him, there was still a spatial barrier between them. It would be extremely difficult to cut these thin chains. Yi Tianzong adjusted his body's condition. For the first time, he used the immortal mansion hidden in the depths of his soul. An endless amount of power blessed Yi Tianzong's body. Then he ordered all the members of the Haoran Sword sect to recite the Haoran Song of Righteousness loudly. Everyone in the Haoran Sword sect who saw this scene recited the Haoran Song of Righteousness loudly again. Because countless members of the Haoran Sword sect recited the Haoran Song of Righteousness loudly with their minds, the vast and majestic Haoran righteousness that existed thousands of miles in the sky went completely berserk. At this time, Yi Tianzong's body surged with a majestic Haoran Tao will, filling the space between heaven and earth. It was the Haoran righteousness that Yi Tianzong had cultivated for thousands of years. Yi Tianzong released his Haoran righteousness with all his might. At the same time, the power of his primordial spirit carried the Tao will of Haoran righteousness up to thousands of miles in the sky, connecting with the roaring and boiling Haoran righteousness. The vast and majestic Haoran righteousness suddenly found an outlet. It poured down from thousands of miles in the sky, along with the Haoran righteousness released by Yi Tianzong, directly entering Yi Tianzong's body. Yi Tianzong tried his best to absorb and control the Haoran righteousness of heaven and earth that entered his body. In the eyes of everyone else in the Haoran Sword sect, it was as if a golden Milky Way had descended from the sky. The golden Milky Way contained a vast and majestic power that poured into Yi Tianzong's body. Yi Tianzong's body shone with a dazzling golden light as he slowly floated in the air. As the golden Milky Way continued to enter Yi Tianzong's body, Yi Tianzong's aura became stronger and stronger. The golden light protecting his body became brighter and brighter. It even formed a golden armor of light on Yi Tianzong's body. At this time, the will of heaven and earth did not suppress Yi Tianzong's aura that was getting stronger and stronger. Soon, Yi Tianzong's aura surpassed the level of Defense Realm King Wu and broke through to the level of Wu Zun. Moreover, it showed no signs of stopping. It was still rapidly increasing. With the endless power of the immortal mansion supporting his body, Yi Tianzong did not have to worry about his body being damaged. He absorbed the Haoran righteousness pouring down from thousands of miles in the sky with all his might. Yi Tianzong's aura only stopped rising when it reached the peak of profound Realm Wu Zun. He once again felt an even stronger confinement of heaven and earth. However, the Haoran righteousness pouring down from the sky was still pouring into Yi Tianzong's body. It showed no signs of stopping. However, Yi Tianzong did not panic. A shining golden sword slowly appeared in Yi Tianzong's hand. The moment the golden sword appeared, the area within 100 miles was filled with endless sword intent. Everyone could feel a deadly sharpness. Yi Tianzong controlled the excess Haoran righteousness in his body and poured it into the weapon in his hand, the boundless godly sword. The boundless godly sword was forged by Yi Tianzong over thousands of years using all kinds of treasures and his own blood essence. It had accompanied Yi Tianzong to fight countless strong enemies. It was Yi Tianzong's natal weapon. As Yi Tianzong's martial way grew, it became stronger and stronger. It was already a peak divine weapon. Yi Tianzong's strongest martial way was also the way of the sword. Ever since Yi Tianzong reincarnated into the profound spirit world, the boundless godly sword had always been hidden in Yi Tianzong's primordial spirit. Now, in order to be able to break the chains that sealed heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong decided to use the boundless godly sword that he had never used before. With the addition of Haoran righteousness, The boundless godly sword did not need to consume his own energy to activate. The boundless godly sword was like a bottomless pit, continuously swallowing the vast and boundless Haran righteousness. As it absorbed more and more Haran righteousness, the boundless godly sword's aura became stronger and sharper. Looking at Yi Tianzong's majestic aura, the people of the Haran sword sect were encouraged. Their recitation of the Haran song of righteousness became louder and louder, gathering more and more of the Haran righteousness between heaven and earth. Yi Tianzong, who was floating in midair, estimated the amount of energy he had accumulated. It should be enough. Now he only needed to break the outermost layer of the chains. It was still not time to break the inner layer of the chains. With the boundless godly sword, he would definitely be able to break these chains. Thus, he raised the boundless godly sword in his hand. Looking at the black chains that sealed the heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong shouted loudly, "The world has fallen, and the heavens have cut off the path of martial arts. Today, I, Yi Tianzong, carry the will of all living beings of Haran. With the heaven and earth Haran righteousness as my sword, I will break the seals and continue the path of martial arts." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Tianzong infused the Haran righteousness in his body into the boundless godly sword. Then he performed the first style of the boundless sword technique. Slash! 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 A golden sword pillar shot up into the sky, cutting through the barriers of space and directly slashing towards the outermost layer of the sealing chains. The indestructible, boundless godly sword that could slash through anything and everything, along with the heaven and earth Haran righteousness, slashed at the chains. Everyone who saw this scene could only hear a ding sound. The boundless godly sword did not disappoint as it cut through the outermost layer of the black chains. The broken black chains turned into energy and disappeared between the heaven and earth. At the same time, after the black chains disappeared, everyone in the profound spirit world felt as if a layer of shackles had been removed from their bodies and souls, and they became much more relaxed. All the martial artists felt that their cultivation had become much easier. As for the martial artists who were hovering around the peak of Wuzong, they had a strange feeling that they could break through to the Marquis Wu realm. However, when they thought about the consequences of their predecessors' breakthroughs, they hesitated, worried about their gains and losses. Before anyone could think of the reason for this phenomenon, an even greater change came. Everyone realized that the plants around them had begun to grow wildly, and the animals had begun to howl towards the sky. The sky had become higher, and the distance between people had increased. The air had become fresher. This was the expansion of the heaven and earth. An unbelievable answer appeared in everyone's hearts. As for the martial artists, they felt that the concentration of origin chi between the heaven and earth had increased by nearly 2 times. Their martial arts cultivation had become smoother, and had become easier to break through to the next realm. Wu Zongjing could also break through to the Marquis Wu realm. The mountain ranges of the various sects had also become taller and wider. The spirit herbs that grew there were also growing rapidly, and their medicinal efficacy was even more abundant. As the source of all this, the entire Haran sword sect's territory had expanded by 3 times. The area of the Haran mountain range had also expanded to a radius of 1,500 Li Tiangang Peak had also risen by several hundred zhang. The originally crowded buildings and courtyards on the mountain peak had become somewhat sparse due to the expansion of Tiangang Peak. Outside Haran City, Yi Tianzong calmly looked at the changes in the heaven and earth. He was somewhat happy in his heart. His plan had succeeded. It seemed that his method was correct. In the future, the development of the Haran sword sect would be on the fast track. The Haran sword sect had also taken the first step towards becoming a holy land. The changes in the heaven and earth didn't last for a long time. In less than an hour, the expansion of the heaven and earth had come to an end. Yi Tianzong looked up at the sky. At this moment, The black clouds that had covered the surrounding 100 li had already disappeared. The sky was clear and cloudless. The feedback of the heaven and earth should be arriving soon. Yi Tianzong used his true essence to transmit a message to all the people of the Haoran Sword sect within a radius of 10 li. He said, "Hurry up and restore yourselves. Quietly wait for the feedback of the heaven and earth." Chapter 66. After receiving Yi Tianzong's reminder, all the Haoran Sword sect members sat cross-legged on the ground under the doubtful gazes of the other sects in the distance, as if they were waiting for something. Just as these people were thinking about the Haoran Sword sect's actions, a dark green glow suddenly appeared in the sky. The dark green glow seemed to have come from the ninth heaven and gathered into a cloud. Then the cloud turned into countless light balls of various sizes and landed on every member of the Haoran Sword sect. The light ball that landed on Yi Tianzong's body was the largest, with a diameter of about 1 foot. At the same time, in other places of the Haoran Sword sect, those who participated in reciting the Haoran Song of Righteousness also had tiny light balls landing on their bodies. These light balls of different sizes condensed into light balls. Once they entered people's bodies, they immediately produced an effect that made everyone happy. Those ordinary people who absorbed the tiny light balls became healthier and stronger. Those warriors who absorbed the light balls all showed signs of a breakthrough. This was the heaven and earth feedback that those who participated in breaking the seal of heaven and earth had received. These light balls were formed from the origin energy that dissipated from the heaven and earth. They were very pure and did not have any side effects. The people of the Haoran Sword sect outside of Haoran City, as the initiators of breaking the seal of heaven and earth and taking most of the credit, naturally received a greater harvest, because they already had a more advanced martial arts cultivation method. All the peak elders of the Haoran Sword sect in Wuzhong smoothly broke through their bottlenecks under the pure energy of the heaven and earth feedback. They condensed their martial Dao Xian core and became new experts of the Marquis Wu. Because of this, the Haoran Sword sect also gained 50 experts of the early stage of the Marquis Wu. Yi Haoran, Ling Xinyue, and other members of Yi Tianzong's family directly broke through to the peak of the middle stage of the Marquis Wu realm. As long as they consolidated, they could break through to the late stage of the Marquis Wu realm at any time. Yi Tianzong, who received the most heaven and earth feedback, broke through to the late stage of the Marquis Wu realm. Yi Tianzong's foundation were far from what Yi Haoran and the others could compare with. The amount of energy that he needed to absorb for each breakthrough was more than 10 times more than Yi Haoran and the others. To be able to break through from the early stage of the Marquis Wu realm to the late stage of the Marquis Wu realm with the help of the heaven and earth feedback. To be able to break through from the early stage of the Marquis Wu realm to the late stage of the Marquis Wu realm without any side effects, to the late stage of the Marquis Wu realm, was heaven's heaven and earth realm, the heaven's feedback. What's more, compared to the energy of the heaven and earth feedback that allowed everyone to break through their martial arts cultivation, Yi Tianzong valued more that the energy of the heaven and earth feedback would subtly improve the potential of the warriors when it was absorbed by them. More importantly, this time the seal of heaven and earth was broken within the territory of the Haoran Sword sect. Therefore, no matter what, the Haoran Sword sect would receive the blessings of the heaven and earth. Even if it was only a small blessing from now on, the Haoran Sword sect would receive more blessings as they continued to break the seal of heaven and earth. More geniuses and talents would be born within the territory of the Haoran Sword sect, which was a very powerful prerequisite for the future development of the Haoran Sword sect, other than Yi Tianzong's family. Although the martial arts cultivation of Yi Qingxian and the other 12 people who came out of the secret realm did not improve, the power of the heaven and earth feedback made up for the damage to their foundation caused by the deep sleep in the ice coffin. Their originally decaying bodies were filled with vitality again, and they had the opportunity to break through to a higher realm. As for those who were in the late stage of the Wuzong realm, they broke through to the peak of the Wuzong realm, while those in the middle stage of the Wuzong realm broke through to the late stage of the Wuzong realm, and so on. All the disciples and elders outside the city of Howren had broken through to at least one small realm in their martial arts cultivation. Even those with excellent aptitude and profound accumulation had broken through to two small realms. The disciples who were at the peak of a large realm had broken through to the next large realm. In less than a day, the strength of the Howren sword sect had increased by several times, not to mention the disciples below the Wuzong realm. Just the number of disciples who had advanced from the peak of the Wuling realm to the early stage of the Howren realm was no less than 10,000. The Howren sword sect had also gained 10,000 strong cultivators in the early stage of the Wuzong realm. In the current profound spirit world, other than the Zhou dynasty, which other force could have 10,000 strong cultivators in the Wuzong realm? The Lingyun Hall and the Sky Demon Temple were super sects that had existed for more than 100,000 years. Their strength was unfathomable, but it was impossible for them to have 10,000 strong cultivators in the Wu Zongjing realm. It could be said that although the Howren sword sect did not have any subordinate forces, in the Central Plains, its overall strength had already surpassed any super sect. It had become a super overlord that was second only to the Zhou dynasty. It was no longer afraid of being targeted by any other forces. Even if the Zhou dynasty was afraid of the Howren sword sect's strength, the consequences of starting a war with the Howren sword sect and whether or not other super sects would take advantage of the situation. Just based on the fact that the Howren sword sect had broken the seal of heaven and earth and opened a new path for all the martial artists in the world, the Zhou dynasty would not act blindly without thinking. Since the Howren sword sect was able to break the seal of heaven and earth once, it was very likely that they would be able to break the seal of heaven and earth a second time. Before obtaining the method to break the seal of heaven and earth from the Howren sword sect, and having the confidence to break the seal of heaven and earth, any sect, force, and the Zhou dynasty would not act blindly without thinking. Otherwise, they would be destroying their own future and becoming enemies with all the martial artists in the world. While the people of the Howren sword sect were experiencing the joy of breaking through their strength, the people of the various forces, who had been watching from the beginning to the end, were feeling rather unbalanced. Everyone was so envious of the great opportunity that the Howren sword sect had obtained this time that they were about to go crazy. They were jealous and hated that they were not the ones who had obtained this opportunity. Seeing that the people of the Howren sword sect had all broken through and their overall strength had increased by several times, the various forces who were originally afraid of the Howren sword sect's strength became even more dissatisfied. Although they were very afraid and dissatisfied of the Howren sword sect in their hearts and were crazily jealous of this great opportunity, the people of the various sects did not lose their minds and say anything overboard. Today was different from yesterday. In just one day, the Howren sword sect's strength had become much stronger. In the past, the Howren sword sect had dared to use violence to intimidate them. Now that their strength had increased greatly, they would not be afraid of their sections. If they did or said anything unpleasant and angered the Howren sword sect, they would really be in deep trouble. On the other hand, the Howren sword sect, who had completed their plan and calmed down from their joy of breaking through, began to retreat to Howren City in an orderly manner under Yi Tianzong's orders. Furthermore, most of the Howren disciples returned to Tiangang Peak and resumed their normal lives. At the same time, they sent out a signal to inform the tens of millions of people who were still sitting according to the 9 palaces, 8 trigrams formation to return to their homes. The city lords of the various cities were in charge of handling the aftermath. As for the people from the various sects and forces who had been spectators, they were once again invited back to Howren City by the Howren sword sect. They were told to wait for a few days, as the Howren sword sect had other matters to announce. In order to avoid any accidents, These people from the various sects and forces did not use their dedicated messenger eagles to report on what they had experienced in the Howren Sword sect. Anyway, there was no harm in it. They had been away for such a long time, so a few more days was not a big deal. They might as well see what other trouble the Howren Sword sect could come up with. Moreover, even if the Howren Sword sect did not say anything, these people had no intention of leaving now. The Howren Sword sect had not obtained the method to break through the seal on heaven and earth, so how could they return empty-handed? Chapter 67. Just after the people of the various clans and forces waited in Howren City for 2 days, the people of the Howren Sword clan invited the important figures of the various clans and teams to the city lord's mansion of Howren City. In a spacious courtyard of the city lord mansion, Yi Tianzong, Yi Howren, Yi Haoyun, Zi Yunxian, and the various palace masters of the Howren Sword sect were all present. The people of the various sects were also led by the disciples of the Howren Sword sect to the courtyard. After waiting for the important figures of the various sects and the Zhou dynasty to arrive, Yi Howren, as the sect master of the Howren Sword sect, opened his mouth and said, "Since everyone is here, in order to not waste everyone's time, I will not waste any more time. Today, I have invited everyone here because there are 2 things that I need to announce to the various sections. First, from today onwards, our Howren Sword sect will change its name to Howranjan sect. We will no longer use the name of the Howren Sword sect. The second thing is that from today onwards, the Xiannu Temple will join our Howranjan sect and become a member of our Howranjan sect. For this matter, the palace master of Xiannu Temple can prove that our Howranjan sect did not force them to do anything." After Yi Howren finished speaking, Zi Yunxian immediately stood up and announced that in order to protect the disciples of the Xiannu Temple, the Xiannu Temple willingly joined the Howranjan sect and was not forced to do so. The first thing that Yi Howren announced on behalf of the Howranjan sect didn't cause any waves. It was just changing the name of the sect. For the various sects, it wasn't anything important. Not to mention the Howranjan sect. Even if you changed your name to Howren Divine Sect or Howren Sky Sect, they wouldn't care. As long as you dare to change your name, we will dare to call you whatever name you want. However, the second thing about the Xiannu Temple joining the Howranjan sect was something that the various sects, including the people of the Zhou dynasty, were not willing to do. Originally, the Howranjan sect had expanded its territory to a radius of 4,000 li. It was bigger than any other supersections. However, there was a reason for this, so the various sects could only pinch their noses and accept it. Moreover, after the expansion of heaven and earth, all the sects' territories would also expand. The Zhou dynasty's territory would be even bigger. At that time, they wouldn't have the time to care about the territories that the various sects had expanded. However, in this world, there was no shortage of resources, but inequality. The Howranjan sect was an exception. Originally, the territory that they ruled was bigger than the other supersections. After the expansion of heaven and earth, the territory that they ruled would only be bigger than the other supersects. This had already reached the bottom line of the various sects' tolerance. Now that the Howranjan sect had unexpectedly gained an inch and wanted a foot by merging with the Xiannu Temple, then the territory that the Xiannu Temple originally occupied would definitely become the territory of the Howranjan sect. This had completely broken the bottom line of the various sections. Regardless of whether the Xiannu Temple was willing or not, all the sects that were originally afraid of the Howranjan sect's strength and were dissatisfied, including the Zhou dynasty, couldn't tolerate it anymore. They absolutely wouldn't let the Howranjan sect continue to expand. This was especially true for the people of the Demon Sword sect, Shura sect, and Jinbu Gate, who were right next to the Howranjan sect and the Xiannu Temple. They were the most nervous and uneasy. The more powerful the Howranjan sect was, the more dangerous it would be for them. Therefore, they didn't care about the consequences of being targeted by the Howranjan sect. They immediately stood up and expressed their opposition to the Xiannu Temple joining the Howranjan sect. With the Demon Sword Sect, Shura Sect, and Jinbu Gate acting as the vanguard, all the other sects and forces also opened their mouths to express their opposition. Regarding this, Yi Haoran didn't have any angry expression. He just smiled faintly and then released a powerful aura to suppress the people of the various sections. He calmed them down and said calmly, "The Xian Nu Temple joining the Haoranjin sect is a foregone conclusion. This is a matter between our two sects and has nothing to do with you. Today, I'm just informing you. Your opinions have no meaning to our two sections." As soon as Yi Haoran's words came out, the people of the various sects and forces immediately exploded with anger. This was clearly looking down on them and treating them like air. Fortunately, although these people were extremely angry, they still remembered that this was not a place where they could behave atrociously. If they made a mistake, they would end up like the Lingyun Hall, the Sky Demon Temple, and the other sects and forces a few days ago. Therefore, each of them was so angry that they wanted to kill the people of the Haoranjin sect. However, they had no choice but to suppress their urge to go berserk and stare angrily at Yi Haoran and the others. Looking at these people who looked like they were about to die from anger but had no choice but to forcefully endure it, the people of the Haoranjin sect were in an extremely good mood. However, the people of the other sects and forces could endure and remain silent. As the representatives of the Zhou dynasty, the great Zhou crown prince and the others couldn't remain silent. Seeing that the people of the various sects and forces were defeated, the Haoranjin sect was about to become stronger. As the indisputable strongest overlord in the Central Plains, the Zhou dynasty had to show the majesty and attitude of the strongest overlord in this kind of situation. The great Zhou crown prince, who had no choice but to speak up, said with an ugly expression, "Sect leader Yi, the Zhou dynasty is the indisputable overlord of the Central Plains. On behalf of the Zhou dynasty, I don't agree with the Xian Nu Temple merging with the Haoranjin sect. Do you want to go against the wishes of the Zhou dynasty and become enemies with us?" As soon as the great Zhou crown prince said this, the eyes of the people of the other sects and forces lit up. They had never felt that the Zhou dynasty was so pleasing to the eye. That's right, why are we so anxious? The one who should be the most anxious should be the Zhou dynasty. Sects and dynasties were natural enemies. The strength and influence of the Haoranjin sect had increased rapidly. The last thing they wanted to see was the Zhou dynasty. Letting the Zhou dynasty take the lead in suppressing the Haoranjin sect, while the other sects and forces add fuel to the fire behind them, was the correct way to open up the situation. They were really anxious and lost their sense of propriety. They almost let the Zhou dynasty take advantage of them. Hearing the great Zhou crown prince's words, Yi Haoran's face darkened. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Tianzong spoke first. Yi Tianzong was sitting next to Yi Haoran, but everyone in the courtyard unconsciously ignored Yi Tianzong's existence. This was not because the various forces were afraid of Yi Tianzong, but because of Yi Tianzong himself. Yi Tianzong displayed the power of his primordial spirit, causing everyone who saw Yi Tianzong to subconsciously ignore his existence. Yi Tianzong's sudden words shocked everyone present. Only then did they realize the existence of Yi Tianzong. Then they developed a strong fear and respect for Yi Tianzong's methods. Yi Tianzong was expressionless and said coldly, "The Xian Nu Temple's incorporation into the Haoranjin sect is unchangeable. It does not need the recognition of any forces. Whether the Zhou dynasty agrees or not, the result will not change. If the Zhou dynasty views the Haoranjin sect as an enemy, the Haoranjin sect will accompany them to the end." Hearing Yi Tianzong's unquestionable words, the great Zhou crown prince and the others were furious. Just as they were about to rebuke him, a supreme power that could suppress heaven and earth suddenly erupted from Yi Tianzong's body. The vast power descended on all the forces in the courtyard, suppressing everyone's body and vital essence. Not to mention speaking, they could only look straight at Yi Tianzong. Just as everyone's hearts were filled with fear and panic, Yi Tianzong stared at the great Zhou crown prince and the others and said calmly, "Although the Hao Ranjin sect is not as powerful as the Zhou dynasty, let's not talk about whether the Zhou dynasty can ignore the threat of the other 3 countries and fight against the Hao Ranjin sect. Even without the threat of the other 3 countries, we can only defeat Marquis Wu today. My current strength is invincible. Marquis Wu at his peak is just an ant in my eyes. Even King Wu can't take more than 100 moves. If the Zhou dynasty attacks the Hao Ranjin sect, then I will kill all the higher-ups of the Zhou dynasty and start a massacre in the capital of the great Zhou dynasty. Without a leader, the Zhou dynasty will soon fall apart. If you don't believe me, you can try." After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, he withdrew his power. The people of the major forces regained their freedom. They clenched their fists and forced themselves to remain calm in their sitting positions. After checking the condition of their bodies, they found that they could still freely mobilize their own power. They all breathed a sigh of relief. Then, a deep fear of Yi Tianzong rose in their hearts. They had not experienced the state of being powerless to resist, unable to call for help, and unable to control their own life and death. They could not understand how terrifying it was. They could not understand how Yi Tianzong could do such a thing just by using his power. Chapter 68. Everyone held their breaths and remained silent. Even the great Zhou crown prince, the 3rd prince, Princess Lin Yue, and the imperial commander, who had been threatened by Yi Tianzong earlier, fell silent. They no longer looked as furious as before, nor did they display the arrogance of a member of the Zhou dynasty. They were truly frightened by Yi Tianzong. "Humph, a bunch of ignorant weaklings. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think you're something," Yi Tianzong thought to himself as he looked at the silent people in front of him. Now that the strength of the Hao Ranjin sect had increased by several times, they no longer had to look at the faces of other powers, including the Zhou dynasty. In the past, the Zhou dynasty wasn't clear about the strength of the Haoran sword sect, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Yi Tianzong and the Haoran sword sect also didn't need to go against the Zhou dynasty. Once these people returned, the strength of the Hao Ranjin sect would be exposed to the world. They would definitely be targeted and feared by other powers. The Hao Ranjin sect wouldn't even be in their eyes. Only the Zhou dynasty, the strongest power in the Central Plains, was feared by the Hao Ranjin sect. Currently, the overall strength of the Hao Ranjin sect was much weaker than the Zhou dynasty. However, just as Yi Tianzong had said, the advantage of the Hao Ranjin sect was that Yi Tianzong possessed invincible strength. As long as the Zhou dynasty dared to attack the Hao Ranjin sect, he would dare to eliminate all the higher-ups of the Zhou dynasty. He would even go on a killing spree in the capital of the great Zhou dynasty. This was also the reason why the Hao Ranjin sect had become so high-profile and fearless. While Yi Tianzong and the higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect were deep in thought, the people of all the forces continued to remain silent. The terrifying experience and Yi Tianzong's methods had made them realize the nature and cruelty of the world of warriors. They had no confidence to refute Yi Tianzong's words. It seemed that Yi Tianzong was only threatening the Zhou dynasty, but in fact he was also threatening them. No one doubted whether Yi Tianzong could do it. Seeing that these people were silent, Yi Tianzong didn't care about their feelings and continued. "When you go back, tell your respective forces that if you want to obtain the method to break the seal of heaven and earth, then come back with sincerity in a year's time. Spiritual herbs, weapons, rare treasures, anything is fine. Tell whoever has enough sincerity. The Hao Ranjin sect doesn't accept any kind of alliance, and don't even think about joining forces to force the Hao Ranjin sect. Whoever dares to do so will have to bear the consequences. If there's nothing else, you can go back." After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, the people of all the forces looked at each other. Although they were unwilling to go back empty-handed, they didn't dare to make a fuss in front of Yi Tianzong. Therefore, under the guidance of Haoran's disciples, They walked out of the castellan mansion, one after another, and returned to their respective residences. They began to pack up and prepare to return to their respective sections. After the people of all the forces left, Yiharan said, "Alas, when these people return to their respective sects, the central plains will be in turmoil again. Only this time, our Hauranjin sect is really standing on the cusp of the storm." Hearing this, Yi Haoyun said, "Big brother, there's no need to sigh. Haven't we already anticipated these consequences? If our Hauranjin sect wants to rise, we can't keep a low profile like before. The other forces won't let us grow. If we want to become a holy land, these are the challenges we have to face. Since we've taken this step, we can't stop. There will definitely be more and more severe challenges and bloody storms waiting for us in the future. For our future glory, we can only go on without hesitation." After Yi Haoyun said this, the 9 hall masters of the Hauranjin sect, including the administrative, diplomatic, examination, and spiritual plant masters, also expressed that they would advance and retreat together with the sect. For the sake of the sect's rise, they were not afraid of any forces or challenges. Yi Tianzong looked at the atmosphere of unity and high fighting spirit of the Hauranjin sect with some satisfaction. He said, "Father, the rise of our Hauranjin sect has already begun, and we can't stop it. For those so-called challenges and storms, we just have to deal with them accordingly. It's no big deal. Now, the most urgent thing is to reclassify the disciples of our sect and rearrange and distribute the positions and affairs of the sect." Hearing this, Yi Haoran said solemnly, "Tianzong, what you said makes sense. It's no big deal for us to go through those challenges and storms directly. It's no big deal. Now, the strength of our sect has improved a lot, especially the warriors of Wu Zongjing, who have increased by tens of thousands at one time. It's not appropriate to continue using the previous classification system. The most urgent thing is to reformulate a suitable classification system. Since Tianzong has brought it up, please tell us your idea and we can discuss it with each other." Yi Tianzong did not refuse and said, "Now that we have broken the seal of heaven and earth once, the strength of the sect has increased greatly. Wuzong alone has increased by more than 10,000 people. So, when we break the seal of heaven and earth again in the future, we will still receive the feedback of heaven and earth, and our strength will definitely increase. So, the new classification system this time should meet the needs of at least the next 20 years. So this time, if we want to change it, we have to change it thoroughly." Yi Tianzong paused and continued. Before the myth realm, martial arts cultivation is divided into basic martial disciple, initial stage martial artist, ascension stage martial artist, transformative stage martial artist, peerless Wuling, origin stage Wuzong, dance stage martial marquis, defense stage Wu King, profound stage Wu Zun, and celestial being Wu Sheng, a total of 10 levels. The higher the level, the longer it takes to cultivate. Then we will first use profound stage Wu Zun as the boundary. Initial stage martial artist and ascension stage martial artist are outer disciples. Transformative stage martial artist and peerless Wuling are inner disciples. Origin stage Wuzong is an elite disciple. Dan stage Marquis Wu is a core disciple or a deacon. Defense stage Wu King is an elder or a personal disciple. And profound stage Wu Zun is the hall master, sect leader, and Taishang elder. In the next few decades, we will use this classification system to determine the promotion of disciples and elders, as well as the appointment and dismissal of various positions in the sect. In the past, the disciples' levels, the status of elders, and various positions in the sect will remain unchanged. When the classification system is determined, it will be implemented according to the new classification system. After Yi Tianzong proposed the classification system, he continued, "Since we have talked about the classification of the sect, we might as well talk about the other things at once. Everyone should have a foundation first. Tomorrow at the Haran Main Hall, we will gather all the senior members of the sect for a detailed discussion." The second thing is that it is no longer suitable for us to recruit disciples in large numbers at Tiangang Peak every year. In the future, we will recruit disciples once every 2 years. At the same time, the sect also lacks an elimination system. Under normal circumstances, the disciples of each level will not be counted because of the overall movement or other unexpected circumstances. Within a certain period of time, if there is no progress in martial arts cultivation after 3 consecutive assessments, then they will be assigned to a city within the territory to be responsible for protecting the interests of the sect. In addition, we need to build more Howren villas outside the sect's territory. With each Howren villas as a base, we will radiate our influence outwards. At the same time, we will select outstanding disciples from these villas to become official disciples of the sect. The third thing is that the world has expanded. Our sect's territory has also expanded by a lot. Next, we will need to continue to encourage the people within the territory to have more children. We will also need to increase the strength of the inspection and supervision of the territory. The fourth thing is that the various departments of the sect need to nurture more people, especially the 100 Herb Hall, Formation Tool Hall, and Spirit Plant Hall. Our sect's future development will require large amounts of pills, weapons, and spirit herbs. From now on, you will need to pay attention to nurturing more talents to avoid a situation where there will not be enough people. The last thing is not urgent. It is mainly related to the matter of breaking the world seal a year later, as well as the time when we will break the seal next time. We will talk about this in the future. For now, there is no need to rush to a conclusion. That's all for now. Is there anything else that you have thought of? After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, he looked at the others and asked. Yi Haoren, Yi Haoyun, and the other 9 hall masters all bowed their heads and thought for a while. For now, they could not think of anything else to add. So Yi Haoren said, "Since there is nothing else for now, then let's do it like this. You hall masters go back and think about the things that Tianzong said. The administrative hall will sort out these things and inform all the senior members who are qualified to participate in the meeting in the Howren Hall. Tomorrow we will discuss it in detail." After Yi Haoren said so, the administrative hall, the examination hall, and the other hall masters all nodded and then left the yard to do their own things. Chapter 69. In the following days, the higher-ups of Howranjin's sect discussed the matters mentioned by Yi Tianzong. At the same time, they added an important matter, which was to settle the score with Jinbu Gate. During the war between the righteous and the devil, Howranjin's sect didn't retaliate against Jinbu Gate because they didn't have enough people and didn't want to cause too many casualties. Whether it was in the past or now, or even in the future, the 3 super sects, Demon Sword Sect, Shura Gate, and Jinbu Gate, were enemies with Howranjin Sect and Xian New Temple. In the past thousands of years, there were countless conflicts and grudges between the 2 sides. During the war between the righteous and the devil, because Jinbu Gate didn't lose too much strength and they were already prepared in order to avoid too many casualties, Howranjin Sect only retaliated against Demon Sword Sect and Shura Gate and let Jinbu Gate go. However, Howranjin Sect didn't forget and didn't give up on revenge against Jinbu Gate. They always secretly collected information about Jinbu Gate. After the war between the righteous and the devil, Howranjin Sect merged with Xian New Temple. In addition, they recruited a large number of disciples and now had more than one. 5 million disciples, especially after breaking the seal of heaven and earth. Their overall strength increased several times. Moreover, the world expanded and the other sects didn't have time to care about it. It was the best time to settle the score with Jinbu Gate. For these matters, the higher-ups of Howranjin Sect formulated corresponding measures and plans. Then they began to officially implement them within the Howranjin Sect and the areas under its rule. At the same time, they secretly mobilized 700,000 Howren disciples and 3,000 Wu Zongjing experts to go to Linzhou City, which was adjacent to Jinbu Gate. They temporarily settled down and waited for the assembly to be completed before taking action. While the Hao Ranjun sect was carrying out its plan, the various sects and forces that had left Haran City were rushing back to their sections. After the first layer of the heaven and earth seal was broken by the Hao Ranjun sect, the heaven and earth expanded. An area of the entire Central Plains expanded several times. Although there were not many changes to the overall terrain, there were many more roads that were not there before. In addition, such a big incident had happened, and none of the forces knew about it. In order to rush back to their respective headquarters as soon as possible and make preparations for the future, all the forces ate and slept in the open, hoping to get back as quickly as possible. On the second night after leaving Haran City, the Crown Prince, the Third Prince, Princess Linyue, and the Imperial Commander of the Zhou dynasty once again gathered together. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. The Third Prince, who had a straightforward temper, broke the stifling atmosphere and said, "I really did not expect that so many things would happen on this trip. The Hao Ranjun sect is really generous. They actually broke the heaven and earth seal and used the feedback of the heaven and earth to greatly increase their strength. I do not know how they learned of these secrets. Also, that young master of the Hao Ranjun sect is really unpredictable. If it were not for him, the Hao Ranjun sect would not have been able to break the heaven and earth seal so smoothly. Big brother, the Hao Ranjun sect's attitude is so presumptuous. When we return to the royal city, how should we explain this to father?" The Third Prince looked at the Crown Prince and asked. Hearing the Third Prince's words, Princess Linyue and the Imperial Commander of the great Zhou dynasty also looked at the Crown Prince. At this moment, the Crown Prince calmly said, "What else can we say? Just say what happened as it is. There is no need to exaggerate. Our Zhou dynasty and those sects are natural enemies. You have all seen the Hao Ranjun sect's current strength. Even the unfathomable Lingyun Hall and the Sky Demon Temple might not be able to compare. In our world of martial artists, strength is respected. The Hao Ranjun sect has become stronger, so they will definitely seek more rights to speak. When father and the others know about this, they will naturally deal with the Hao Ranjun sect. The only thing I am worried about is the young master of the Hao Ranjun sect. This person's strength is simply unfathomable. In the past, we were both prodigies on the prodigy ranking. I did not expect that there would be such a huge difference. Just as he said, based on the strength he displayed when he broke the seal of heaven and earth, an ordinary peak marquis would not be a match for him. If we have a conflict with the Hao Ranjun sect, this person will be an extremely dangerous and unstable factor." The Crown Prince's objective, calm, and emotionless answer satisfied the Third Prince, Princess Linyue, and the Imperial Commander of the great Zhou dynasty. As the Crown Prince of the Zhou dynasty, other than the necessary tactics, one of the most important qualities was to be able to face everything objectively and calmly. He could not act impulsively according to his own preferences. At this moment, Princess Linyue said, "When the time comes, how to deal with the Hao Ranjun sect will naturally be discussed by Imperial Father and the other important ministers. What I care more about is that the environment of heaven and earth has become better and cultivation has become easier. I want to break through Wuzong and become Marquis Wu as soon as possible. Although we will obtain the method to break the seal of heaven and earth from the Hao Ranjun sect a year later. Who knows when the seal will be broken again, and who will it be?" As Princess Linyue spoke, she stood up, revealing her beautiful figure. Then she said, "I will not worry about these complicated matters. Imperial brother, if there is nothing else, I will return." After speaking, Princess Linyue walked out of the tent and left. Looking at Princess Linyue's departing figure, the Crown Prince of the great Zhou dynasty narrowed his eyes and said, "Linyue's martial aptitude is outstanding among Imperial Father's many children. She is a good match for the Hao Ranjun sect's young sect master." Hearing this, the Third Prince said, "Unfortunately, the Hao Ranjun sect's young sect master has clearly stated that he will not accept any form of alliance. According to what we have seen and heard in Haran City, The Haoranyang sect master has absolute authority in the Haoranjin sect. Since he has said this, he will not accept marriage. However, we can still give it a try. No matter what, our Zhou dynasty will always be the strongest ruler of the Central Plains. The third prince's words were indeed reasonable, but he deliberately ignored the fact that the Zhou dynasty's internal strength was somewhat lacking. Regarding this, the third prince, the crown prince, and the silent imperial commander all had a tacit understanding. After hearing this, the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty smiled faintly. Then he said to the imperial commander, "Commander Wang, with the changes in the world, the journey back to the imperial city will be filled with twists and turns. We will need the commander to be more careful. We will return to the imperial city as quickly as possible so that our dynasty can make preparations." Commander Wang bowed and said, "Rest assured, Crown Prince. I will ensure that we will return to the imperial city smoothly. It is already late, so I will take my leave. Crown Prince, please rest early." After speaking, Commander Wang walked out of the tent and left. After Commander Wang left, the third prince, who had nothing else to do, also left. Everyone went to rest and continued their journey the next day. Coincidentally, similar to the Zhou dynasty's team, the teams from the other sects also had similar conversations. Their goal was none other than to rush back to their sects as quickly as possible to make preparations. Just as these various forces were rushing back to their respective headquarters, the news of the Haoranjin sect changing the name of the sect, merging with the Xian New Temple, breaking the seal of the world, and continuing the path of martial arts was spread through the channels of Tiangang Pavilion. Once the news was out, it shocked everyone. The first reaction of the cultivators and forces who received the news was that it was impossible. How could the Haoranjin sect have the ability and strength to do so? It was only after repeated confirmation that the Tiangang Pavilion also spread the news that all the first-rate forces, as well as the Zhou dynasty, had been invited to watch the entire process and were on their way back, that everyone had no choice but to believe it. Chapter 70. After the news of Haoranjin sect breaking the seal of heaven and earth spread, all the martial artists and forces had different reactions. Some were grateful, some were praising, some were disdainful, some were hostile, some were indifferent, and there were even all kinds of conspiracy theories. There were all kinds of opinions and so on and so forth. Haoranjin sect didn't have the time to pay attention to these, but they did instruct Tiangang building to pay attention to those martial artists and forces that were hostile to them. Once Haoranjin sect was free, they would issue a mission to the disciples of Haoranjin sect to eliminate these hostile martial artists and forces. Yi Tianzong's personality was to seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He believed in eliminating all enemies and dangers while they were still in the bud. He would never let go of anyone who was hostile to him, even if that person was ignorant. In front of Yi Tianzong, he was just an ant. In the past, Yi Tianzong would always hear a similar saying, that an elephant wouldn't care about the provocation of an ant, and that a true expert wouldn't bother to deal with the weak. In any case, it was those weak or ignorant ants who provoked the strong. The strong would also disdain and be too lazy to teach them a lesson. Yi Tianzong expressed that this saying wouldn't work on him. As long as someone was hostile to him and became his enemy, it didn't matter if they were an ant or an expert. As long as he could eliminate them, he wouldn't let them go. Rather than waiting for the enemy to become stronger before killing them, which would be more challenging and meaningful, Yi Tianzong believed in eliminating all enemies while they were still in the bud. He didn't have to worry about the consequences of his cultivation. In the process of cultivation, he would encounter many challenges and calamities. Yi Tianzong didn't have the mood and energy to be patient with those weak enemies. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Haoranjin sect was already on the right track under the new regulations and measures. The 700,000 Haoran disciples and 3,000 Wuzong experts had also been secretly deployed in Linzhou City. In order to deal with Jinbu Gate, in addition to the 700,000 Haoran disciples and 3,000 Wuzong experts, Haranjin sect also sent out more than 40 Marquis Wu experts to deal with Jinbu Gate. Among the 25 new Marquis Wu experts, Lin Qingxian and the other 12 people who had long wanted to exercise their muscles all took action. There was also Yi Tianzong, Ling Xinyue, Yi Yuanshan, Li Qingya, Yi Haoyun, and Zi Yunxian. In total, there were 43 Marquis Wu experts. It was obvious that Yi Tianzong was protecting these people to deal with the King Wu experts that might appear in Jinbu Gate. With such a tyrannical lineup, even Yi Haoran felt that it was too much of a bully. No matter how strong Jinbu Gate was, at most, there were only a few hundred Wuzong experts. Compared to 3,100, it was a far cry. The number of official disciples was only around 300,000. Compared to 600,000, it was also a far cry. Even if all the Marquis Wu experts in the secret territory were invited, how many people would there be? Haoranjin sect had sent out 43 Marquis Wu experts. Moreover, there was also Yi Tianzong, Ling Xinyue, Yi Yuanshan, Li Qingya, Yi Haoyun, and Zi Yunxian. These 6 super experts couldn't be judged by common sense. If Jinbu Gate didn't deal with this guy, well, they might be finished. However, Yi Haoran didn't have any intention of being soft-hearted. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't leave as the sect leader, he would have personally gone up to deal with Jinbu Gate. Unlike when Yi Yuanshan was the sect leader of Haoranjin sect, when Yi Haoran was the sect leader, he faced more pressure from Jinbu Gate. In his heart, Jinbu Gate was on the same level as his mortal enemy, the Devil's Sword sect. Now that the Devil's Sword sect was half dead, only Jinbu Gate was left as an eyesore. Especially when he announced that the Xiannu Temple would be merged into the Haoranjin sect a few days ago, Jinbu Gate recklessly came out and expressed their opposition. Yi Haoran had long wanted to eliminate Jinbu Gate. On this day, 700,000 Haoran disciples and 3,000 Wuzong disciples had gathered in Linzhou City. Under the leadership of Yi Tianzong and the other 6 people, as well as Marquis Wu, they crossed the border and entered the territory ruled by Jinbu Gate. Since the war between the righteous and Devil's Sword sects 5 years ago, Haoranjin sect had been collecting information on Jinbu Gate and infiltrating it. Therefore, they had a very clear understanding of the terrain within Jinbu Gate's territory. Even when the world changed later on, Haoranjin sect still immediately understood the situation within Jinbu Gate's territory. With the support of a large amount of information and secretly planted forces, Haoranjin sect's army smoothly conquered one city after another. When the headquarters of Jinbu Gate received the news of Haoranjin sect's attack, they were also nervous and at a loss for what to do. Things were different now. In the past, they didn't know the strength of Haoranjin sect, so they could still calmly make arrangements to resist Haoranjin sect. However, since a few days ago, the true martial sect's vice sect master and the others had returned and told them everything they had seen in the Haoran Orthodox sect, the current strength of the Haoran Orthodox sect had been exposed. This had caused the true martial sect to panic. They couldn't help but be nervous and afraid. The difference in strength was too big. In the past, Jinbu Gate relied on their strength to bully Haoranjin sect and Xiannu Temple arrogantly and domineeringly. Now that their strength had increased greatly and the other sects had no time to take care of them, it would be strange if Haoranjin sect didn't ruthlessly seek revenge on them. Sure enough, when they were still panicking and trying to think of countermeasures, Haoranjin sect's revenge came. According to some of the information they had scouted, an army of more than 700,000 people, not to mention the number of martial great masters inside, there were definitely more than their true martial sect, and there would definitely be martial Marquis experts following them. Although their true martial sect had awakened the martial Marquis realm seniors in the secret realm a few days ago, there were no less than 30 of them. They had even awakened 3 martial king realm seniors at all costs. However, when they thought of Yi Tianzong's strength that the deputy sect leader and the others had told them, they still felt uncertain. However, although they were afraid, it was absolutely impossible for them to give up resistance. Hao Ranzhen's sect wouldn't let them go just because they surrendered. Therefore, Jinbu Gate's people hurriedly mobilized their forces to resist Hao Ranzhen's sect. However, when Jinbu Gate's forces were deployed to Jinwu City for the decisive battle with Hao Ranzhen's sect, they also started the seed plan that they had prepared beforehand. Jinbu Gate took 30,000 elite disciples and a portion of Jinbu Gate's higher-ups to hide in the Jinwu mountain range under the leadership of several marquis Wu realm seniors. The Jinwu mountain range was filled with dense vegetation and covered an area of more than 1,000 miles. It would be extremely difficult to find tens of thousands of people hiding in it. While Jinbu Gate was nervously preparing, the Hao Ranzhen sect's army only took 10 days of steady progress. They cleared out all the martial artists along the way and finally arrived at Jinwu City. When they arrived outside Jinwu City, it was already close to evening. Hao Ranzhen's sect began to set up camp outside the city. The next day, there wasn't any unnecessary war of words. After the Hao Ranzhen sect was ready, they immediately launched an attack. Just like when they attacked the Demon Sword sect and the Shura sect, the Hao Ranzhen sect used gunpowder to blow up the city walls and then attacked into Jinwu City. It was worth mentioning that after breaking through the first layer of the Heaven and Earth seal, there seemed to be some subtle changes in the laws of heaven and earth. The power of the gunpowder decreased slightly. It could be foreseen that after breaking through a few more layers of the Heaven and Earth seal, the gunpowder would lose its effect. Therefore, Hao Ranzhen's sect directly brought 1/3 of their gunpowder storage to attack Jinbu Gate. Although the power of the gunpowder was reduced, they still achieved a good effect in terms of quantity. The city walls of Jinwu City were blown up by a large amount of gunpowder. The Hao Ranzhen sect's people took this opportunity to directly attack Jinwu City and began to fight with the people of Jinbu Gate in close combat. Due to the lack of time and the fact that they intentionally preserved some of their strength, Jinbu Gate only managed to gather less than 600,000 people in Jinwu City. Compared to the 700,000 troops of Hao Ranzhen's sect, their overall strength was far inferior. This battle was the first time that the disciples of Hao Ranzhen's sect outnumbered their opponents. They didn't feel any pressure at all, and the battle was one-sided. The Marquis Wu ancestors that Jinbu Gate invited from the secret territory were also stopped by the Marquis Wu masters of Hao Ranzhen's sect. Chapter 71. On the side of Jinbu Gate, there were 26 Marquis Wu warriors on the battlefield, all of whom were at least in the middle stage of Marquis Wu. On the side of Hao Ranzhen's sect, Yi Qingxian and the other 12 people led 25 Marquis Wu elders to fight against the 26 people of Jinbu Gate. Because of the martial arts methods and techniques modified by Yi Tianzong, the combat power of all the people of Hao Ranzhen's sect was several times stronger than before. Therefore, Yi Qingxian and the other 12 people who had made up for the foundation of Jinbu Gate were able to hold off 2 Marquis Wu warriors on his own and gain the upper hand. The other 11 people also gained the upper hand in the battle, forcing the people of Jinbu Gate to retreat step by step. The remaining 13 Marquis Wu warriors of Jinbu Gate, who were at the middle stage, were being held off by the 25 Marquis Wu warriors of Hao Ranzhen's sect, who were at the early stage. Almost 2-to-1, they also gained the upper hand in the battle. Only one Marquis Wu who was at the early stage was fighting against a Marquis Wu who was at the middle stage of Jinbu Gate. They were evenly matched. In the battle between Marquis Wu warriors, Jinbu Gate was in a disadvantageous situation, but there were no casualties for the time being. However, in the battle between Wu Zongjing and Wu Zongjing, Jinbu Gate suffered heavy casualties. Hao Ranzhen's sect had a total of 3,000 Wu Zongs, which was more than 9 times the number of Wu Zongs of Jinbu Gate. Jinbu Gate was completely unable to resist the attack of Hao Ranzhen's sect. In less than 2 hours, Hao Ranzhen's sect had captured more than half of Jinbu Gate and killed more than 300,000 people of Jinbu Gate. Faced with such a bad situation, the 3 Wu King warriors of Jinbu Gate at the rear could no longer sit still and appeared on the battlefield one after another. The 3 Wu King warriors of Jinbu Gate wanted to intervene in the battle between Marquis warriors and kill the Marquis Wu warriors of Hao Ranjin sect. However, Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoyun, and the other 4 people who had been waiting for a long time appeared immediately and intercepted the 3 Wu King warriors of Wu. Yi Tianzong stood on the side and did not make a move, although Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoyun, and the other 4 people were only at the peak of the middle stage of Marquis Wu. Their strength had long surpassed the limit of ordinary Marquis warriors and had just stepped into the threshold of Wu King realm. In particular, Ling Xinyue had a special body constitution. Because of the changes in the world, it had shown signs of being activated, and her foundation were getting deeper and deeper. Moreover, she was Yi Tianzong's wife. After all these years, she had long become the second strongest warrior of Hao Ranjin sect, leaving Yi Tianzong and the others behind. Ling Xinyue fought a Wu King warrior of the middle stage alone. Yi Yuanshan and Li Qingya fought a Wu King warrior of the early stage. Yi Haoyun and Zi Yunxian fought a Wu King warrior of the early stage. The 3 Wu King warriors of Jinbu Gate looked gloomy when Ling Xinyue, Yi Yuanshan, and the other 4 people appeared. Sure enough, the Hao Ranjin sect was also prepared. After waking up from the secret land for so many days, they had a general understanding of the strength of the Hao Ranjin sect. Therefore, when they saw Ling Xinyue, Yi Yuanshan, and the other 4 people who were only at the middle stage of Marquis Wu intercepting them, they did not dare to be careless, even though they also thought that the people of Hao Ranjin sect were arrogant. Since they dared to intercept them with such a big gap between their realms, they were either idiots or thought that they were strong enough. Obviously, those who could cultivate to the Marquis Wu realm were not idiots. As the battle began, the 3 Wu King warriors of Jinbu Gate, Ling Xinyue, and the other 4 people realized that the other party was a strong opponent, so they all fought with all their strength. The 2 sides fought fiercely in midair, creating a huge commotion. Yi Tianzong watched from the side as Ling Xinyue and the other 4 people fought with the Wu King warriors of Jinbu Gate. The battle was evenly matched, which was within his expectations. Although the divine martial heavenly skill was incomparably marvelous, and Yi Yuanshan, Ling Xinyue, and the others were much stronger than ordinary people after practicing it, and their strength had also increased by dozens of times. It was already a good performance to be able to fight against the early stage of Marquis Wu as a middle stage Marquis Wu. Unless they had a special constitution, like Ling Xinyue, facing the early stage of King Wu was the limit of what Yi Yuanshan and the others could do at the early stage of Marquis Wu. The Wu King realm was a watershed, and it was also an important realm for all warriors to show off their foundation and strength, as well as to establish the foundation for their future path of cultivation. After a warrior cultivated to the Wu King realm, he needed to open up the acupoints in his body. Because of the different rules of the world, the physiques of the people in each world were different, and the number of acupoints hidden in the body was also different. Like the profound spirit world, which was close to the level of the Great Thousand Worlds at its peak, the number of acupuncture points in the human martial artists' bodies was at most 10,800. In the Great Thousand Worlds, the number of acupuncture points in the human martial artists' bodies was 36,500. And human warriors who had the foundation of the Heaven's Pride realm all had 129,600 acupoints. In the current profound spirit world, a normal Wu King realm warrior could open up 108 acupoints. Talented warriors could open up 365 acupoints, and at most, open up 1080 acupoints. It was not that they could not open up more acupoints, but that without enough foundation, the body could not bear the pressure of opening more acupoints. Unless one had a special physique, it was very dangerous to forcefully open up more acupoints than the body could bear. Actually, fundamentally speaking, a warrior with a special physique would have a higher life force and foundation than a normal warrior without a special physique. It would be easier for them to open up their acupoints than normal people. and the range of pressure they could bear to open up their acupoints would be greater. Actually, after cultivating the divine martial heavenly technique to a certain level, one could gradually cultivate a special physique. But the current environment of the profound spirit world did not allow for it, so Yi Tianzong could only think of another way after this battle. In the Wu King realm, every time one opened up an acupoint, it was like adding a mini Dan Tian. At the same time, after opening up an acupoint, the warrior could directly absorb heaven and earth origin qi from the outside world through the opened acupoints, increasing the speed of cultivation. It was conceivable that the more acupoints one opened, the stronger the potential and strength of the warrior, and the speed of cultivation would not slow down because of the more acupoints one opened. Therefore, the difference in strength between the Wu King realm was greater than any other realm. Moreover, the strength of the Wu King realm was far greater than that of the Marquis Wu realm. What was a Wu King, a king of martial arts, above the Marquis? It was not easy to fight someone of a higher realm. Although Ling Xinyue, Yi Yuanshan, and the others could fight against the Wu King realm when they were in the middle stage of the Marquis Wu realm. In fact, the 3 Wu King realms of the Jinbu Gate realm could not display their peak strength at all. Just like Yi Qingxian and the others, the 3 Wu King realms of the Jinbu Gate had also slept for a long time in the secret land. They had been eroded by the cold air for a long time, and the foundation of their bodies had been damaged long ago. On the surface, they looked fine, but in fact they could only display 70% of their peak strength at most. This allowed Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoyun, and the others to take advantage of this loophole. Otherwise, with such a huge gap between the realms, no matter how amazing Ling Xinyue and the others were, they would not be a match for the 3 Wu King realms of the Jinbu Gate. As time went by, casualties began to appear in the battle at the Marquis Wu realm. The Marquis Wu realms of the Jinbu Gate realm could not defeat the people of the Hao Ranjin sect, and were killed by Yi Qingxian and the others one after another. In the battle in the Jinwu city below, the Hao Ranjin sect was about to win. There were only a little more than 100,000 people left on the side of the Jinbu Gate, and they were being hunted down by the people of the Hao Ranjin sect. It would not be long before they were all wiped out by the Hao Ranjin sect. Chapter 72. The battle situation was very unfavorable, and the Haran Orthodox sect's people were also attacking for a long time without success. The 3 martial kings of the true martial sect saw that the situation was hopeless, and the idea of retreating arose in their hearts. If they didn't leave now, once the martial Marquis experts on their side were eliminated by the righteous sect, their escape route would be cut off and they wouldn't be able to leave. The 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate, who had made up their minds to retreat, exchanged glances and then began to attack Ling Xinyue and the other 4 people together. Caught off guard, Ling Xinyue and the other 4 people were a little flustered. They switched from offense to defense. Just as Ling Xinyue and the other 4 people switched to defense, the 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate shot up into the sky, intending to leave the battlefield and retreat. Yi Tianzong, who had been watching the battle from the sidelines, also noticed the intention of the 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate. It could only be said that the older, the wiser. However, he wouldn't let these 3 people escape. Just as the 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate shot up into the sky, Yi Tianzong also flashed and appeared above the 3 Jinbu Gate people at an even faster speed, blocking their way. Suddenly, they saw a very young person appear above them. The 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate were startled. Then, as if they had thought of something, their faces instantly became very serious. Before the 3 people could move, Yi Tianzong made his move. He first used the Qian Kuan force field to envelop the 3 people. The 3 people from Jinbu Gate suddenly found it very difficult to move. While they were in the air, Yi Tianzong slapped each of them with his palm. The 3 people who were attacked by Yi Tianzong were immediately seriously injured and spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Then, Yi Tianzong withdrew the Qian Kuan force field. The 3 King Wu from Jinbu Gate directly fell from the air to the ground. Their already serious injuries worsened. Then, in order to prevent them from committing suicide, Yi Tianzong directly destroyed their martial cultivation and knocked them out. Yi Tianzong didn't intend to kill these people for the time being. After returning to the sect, he could try to get some secrets about Jinbu Gate from these people. In particular, Yi Tianzong was very interested in the secret land of Jinbu Gate. Fortunately, Tianzong, you are here. Otherwise, these people would have escaped. I didn't expect the Qingwu realm to be so difficult to deal with, Yi Yuanshan said when he came close. As usual, Ling Xinyue stood directly beside Yi Tianzong, next to Yi Tianzong. Yi Tianzong reached out and stroked Ling Xinyue's soft black hair. He said, "The Qingwu realm is an important watershed in martial cultivation. After sleeping for a long time, these people can only exert 70% of their strength. Otherwise, grandfather, you are no match for them. Let's not talk about this for now. When we return to the sect, I will tell you in detail about the Qingwu realm." Yi Tianzong directly captured the experts of King Wu of Jinbu Gate, which caused serious deterrence and psychological pressure to the people of Jinbu Gate. For a moment, they were shocked, and the elders of Hao Ranjin sect, Marquis Wu, seized this opportunity to secure the victory. It didn't take long for the experts of Marquis Wu of Jinbu Gate to be wiped out. None of them escaped. At the same time, the battle in Jinwu City below was coming to an end. The Hao Ranjin sect was clearing out the remaining tens of thousands of people of Jinbu Gate. Similarly, it didn't take long for the remaining tens of thousands of people of Jinbu Gate to be wiped out by the Hao Ranjin sect. The sect leader and deputy sect leader of Jinbu Gate also failed to escape. The battle was over. In less than 4 hours, the Hao Ranjin sect broke into Jinwu City and wiped out nearly 600,000 people of Jinbu Gate. They only suffered less than 1,000 casualties. It could be said that they had won a great victory. After winning the battle, the people of the Hao Ranjin sect didn't delay. They directly passed through Jinwu City and climbed to Jinwu Peak without any obstacles. The people of Jinbu Gate had been prepared for this. They burned important places in advance and then left the mountain empty, leaving behind an empty shell. Yi Tianzong activated the power of vital spirit and scanned the area within a radius of 300 miles. He found the tens of thousands of people of Jinbu Gate hiding in the depths of Jinwu mountain range. Yi Tianzong smiled indifferently and didn't pay any more attention to them. He also didn't have the intention to wipe them out. The strength of the Hao Ranjin sect wasn't strong enough. After the changes in the world, they hadn't digested their own territory. If they wiped out Jinbu Gate, how to deal with Jinbu Gate's territory would be a big problem. Even if they wiped out those people in Jinwu mountain range, they wouldn't be able to wipe out the other disciples of Jinbu Gate in time. In the end, the news that Jinbu Gate had been conquered by the Hao Ranjin sect would be known by other forces. Once they occupied Jinbu Gate's territory, the other forces who couldn't bear it anymore would definitely attack them. Instead of being surrounded and annihilated by other forces, it would be better to let these people go. After all, when the Hao Ranjin sect retreated, those people hiding in Jinwu mountain range would return to Jinwu Peak and rebuild Jinbu Gate. At that time, the strength of Jinbu Gate would be greatly reduced. They would definitely hide and recover their strength. At that time, the Demon Sword sect, Shura sect, and Jinbu Gate would be greatly weakened by the Hao Ranjin sect and would hide. As long as the Hao Ranjin sect didn't find trouble with them, the people of the Demon Sword sect, Shura sect, and Jinbu Gate wouldn't be so stupid as to look for trouble. They couldn't wait for the Hao Ranjin sect to forget about them. As for the idea of bringing in external forces to deal with the Hao Ranjin sect, the people of the 3 sects wouldn't do it unless they were in a desperate situation. It was easy to invite the devil in, but difficult to send him away. Everyone understood this principle. With these 3 sects blocking the outside, the Hao Ranjin sect would have a stable environment for development for a long time in the future. Now is not the time. I'll let you live, but soon. As long as the seal is broken 2 more times, there will be no more scruples. It will be time for the Jinbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Shura Sect to disappear. Yi Tianzong stood on Jinwu Peak and thought to himself as he looked into the depths of Jinwu mountain range. Not long after staying on Jinwu Peak, the people of Hao Ranjin Sect walked down Jinwu Peak. Not long after, there was a loud bang that shook the earth and the mountains. Jinwu Peak followed in the footsteps of the Demon Sword Sect and Shura Sect. The True Martial Sect had successfully retaliated against the True Martial Sect, and under the hateful and indignant gazes of the remaining members of the True Martial Sect who were hiding in the True Martial Mountain Range, they swaggered off, leaving behind the devastated True Martial Peak and True Martial City. After this battle, Jinbu Gate wouldn't be able to recover for at least 70 to 80 years. After returning from a great victory, the Hao Ranjin Sect regained its peace. According to the plan and measures that they had formulated earlier, they continued to digest the changes in the area and the fruits of their labor. At the same time, they were actively improving their strength. After many years of nurturing by Yi Tianzong, the 100 Herb Hall, the Formation and Tools Hall, and the Spiritual Plants Hall all had a group of people who could be of use. They also had candidates for the Hall Masters, other than some top-grade elixirs that still required Yi Tianzong's help. Yi Tianzong didn't need to worry about the rest of the matters. With the full support of the 100 Herb Hall, the Formation and Tools Hall, and the countless elixirs collected from the Haran Mountain Range and the Xian Nyu Mountain Range, the Hao Ranjin Sect had enough elixirs and weapons to supply the cultivation needs of more than 5 million disciples. Because of this, the strength of the Hao Ranjin Sect was still rapidly improving. Just as the Hao Ranjin Sect was taking advantage of this short period of peace to rapidly develop, the news that Jinbu Gate had been breached by the Hao Ranjin Sect in Jinwu City and injured Jinwu Peak gradually spread out. As expected, when the various major powers heard that the Hao Ranjin Sect had only killed a large number of people from Jinbu Gate before retreating and didn't occupy Jinbu Gate's territory, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Then they put this matter to the back of their minds and began to concentrate on managing their own territories. At the same time, they were preparing to go to the Hao Ranjin Sect to exchange the method to break the seal of heaven and earth after the new year. Chapter 73. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 months had passed. It was the new year again. During these 10 months of peace, the Hao Ranjin Sect had complete control over the area that had been under its rule after the change of heaven and earth. The lives of the people in the territory were not affected by this change. On the contrary, they were living better than before. The new year was also spent in happiness. After the new year, all the major sects and the Zhou dynasty had sent powerful teams to the Hao Ranjin Sect. Each team had more than 10,000 people, and there were many experts in the Marquis Wu realm and the Wu Zongjing realm. The outstanding disciples of all the major sects had also sent more than 1,000 people. At the same time, each team was escorting a huge amount of various spiritual herbs, spiritual medicines, and refining materials. The teams that had gone to the Hao Ranjin Sect were almost all the super sects, the Zhou dynasty, and hidden forces whose real strength was not inferior to the super sects. First-class sects and other forces did not participate. These forces had a total of 18 teams, and the total number of people was more than 300,000. These 18 teams had a total of more than 300,000 people, and none of them was below the martial soldier realm. Moreover, the total number of Marquis Wu realm experts far exceeded the number of Marquis Wu realm experts in the Hao Ranjin Sect. The Hao Ranjin Sect had long been mentally prepared for this. Although it seemed that the high-end strength of the Hao Ranjin Sect was not comparable to the total strength of these teams, the Hao Ranjin Sect had Yi Tianzong as its leader, so it was not afraid of these forces at all. After the expansion of heaven and earth, the journey was even longer. In addition, these forces had set out at different times. They had a huge lineup and carried a large amount of spiritual herbs, spiritual medicines, and other materials. It would take more than 2 months at the fastest time to reach the Haurangian sect. The Haurangian sect was not idle while waiting for the teams from the various forces. After the new year, Yi Haoran, Yi Yuanshan, Yi Tianzong, Yi Qingxian, and the others once again came to the secret realm of the Haurangian sect. This time, they decided to awaken all the Marquis Wu ancestors of the Yi family, as well as the Marquis Wu ancestors who were close to the Yi family. At the same time, they would kill all the Marquis Wu enemies of the Yi family after awakening them, so as to prevent future troubles. If these Marquis Wu realms, which were hostile to the Yi family, were not awakened, they would be stimulated by the rich qi of heaven and earth to wake up sooner or later as the world gradually recovered and the qi of heaven and earth in the secret realm became thicker. At that time, they would become unstable factors. If they were not killed after being awakened, they would definitely cause all kinds of trouble and cause trouble for the current Haurangian sect. Moreover, they could only kill them outside the secret realm. Although the ancestors of the past who were sleeping in the secret realm were sleeping in ice coffins, they were not unconscious. Once they killed them in the secret realm, they would definitely be discovered and it would not end well. Although Yi Tianzong did not care, he did not want to make things difficult for Yi Haoran and the others. So he simply decided to kill them outside the secret realm. Again, the Haurangian sect did not need the internal factions to check and balance each other. It only needed the voice of the Yi family. It would be best if it could only become a holy land under the leadership of Yi Tianzong and his family. People's hearts were unpredictable. Anyway, they were hostile to the Yi family, so they might as well kill them all. This time, they killed the people of the Marquis Wu realm. Next time, they would kill the people of the Wu King realm. They would not stop until all the people who were hostile to the Yi family had been killed. It was still the same operation. Yi Haoran took out a quaint jade token and injected the Jinqi in his body into it. Then the quaint jade token shone with white brilliance and left Yi Haoran's hand and floated into the air. After a burst of brilliance, a void portal appeared in front of Yi Haoran and the others. Yi Haoran and Yi Qingxian walked into the secret realm with ease. Yi Tianzong scanned the whole secret realm with the power of his spirit and found that the secret realm had become a little bigger, but the change was limited. The qi of heaven and earth inside was also richer. After more than 2 hours, more than 100 people of the Marquis Wu realm followed Yi Haoran and Yi Qingxian out of the secret realm one after another. After all these people of the Marquis Wu realm walked out of the secret realm, Yi Haoran controlled the jade token to close the door of the secret realm and then put away the token. Among the more than 200 people of the Marquis Wu realm who walked out of the secret realm, only 63 people stood on Yi Qingshuan's side, and the remaining 60 people stood on the other side. They looked at each other with some vigilance, and there was a clear division. Yi Tianzong pointed to the 60 people on the other side, looked at Yi Qingxian, and asked, "Are these all?" These people who had just come out of the secret realm were confused by the sudden question. Yi Qingxian looked at the 60 people on the other side with pity, nodded, and said, "These are all of them." Looking at Yi Qingshuan's pitiful eyes and feeling the strange atmosphere at this time, the 60 people on the other side felt a little uneasy, although they did not know what was going on. They were about to speak, but Yi Tianzong, who was no longer in the mood to wait, did not give them a chance to speak. In an instant, the power of his whole body broke out, and the horrible momentum suppressed everyone. To be on the safe side, Yi Tianzong also used the universal force field. Everyone within a mile was shrouded by the universal force field and could not move. Then Yi Tianzong directly attacked, and the shadows of his palms filled the sky, attacking the 60 people who could not resist. The 60 people who had just walked out of the secret realm watched the attacks fall on them, and they could not resist. In the end, they all died with hatred. After dealing with the hostile Marquis Wu, Yi Tianzong removed the universal force field, looked at Yi Qingxian, Yi Haoran, and the others, and said, "I'll leave these people to you. I'll go first." After saying that, Yi Tianzong disappeared, leaving only a shadow that slowly dissipated. No one saw how he left. After Yi Tianzong made his move, he left in a carefree manner. Only Yi Haoran, Yi Qingxian, and a few others shook their heads and smiled bitterly as they comforted the more than 60 martial marquises who were still in a state of shock. In the following half a month, Yi Qingxian and Yi Yuanshan took these people to familiarize themselves with the current Haoranjin sect, explained the development process and current situation of the Haoranjin sect, and taught them the improved cultivation method and the Haoran scripture. Of the 63 Marquis Wu who came out of the secret realm, 25 of them belonged to the Yi family, and the remaining 38 were all Marquis Wu who supported the Yi family closely. After these 63 people understood the current situation of the Haoranjin sect in detail, they were naturally very surprised by the strength of the Haoranjin sect. They quickly adjusted their positions and became the highest elders of the Haoranjin sect, and had no intention of interfering in the management of the Haoranjin sect. If they had any thoughts when they just came out of the secret realm, after Yi Tianzong killed those who did not see eye to eye with lightning speed, and after Yi Qingxian and Yi Yuanshan took them to familiarize themselves with the situation of the Haoranjin sect, they dismissed the idea of relying on seniority to participate in the management of the sect. Yi Tianzong's strength was still fresh in their minds, and there were many new Marquis Wu in the Haoranjin sect, so they would not allow them to take away the power in their hands. Yi Haoran's family was also stronger than them, so they could only obediently be the highest elders. In any case, Yi Tianzong's family had the final say in the sect now, and no one was targeting or scheming against them. There was nothing wrong with practicing peacefully. Soon, more than 2 months passed. The teams of various forces entered the area under the rule of the Haoranjin sect one after another, and then arrived in the city of Haoran. It was not until 3 months later that the last team of more than 20,000 people from the Zhou dynasty arrived in the city of Haoran. After more than a year, the various forces once again gathered in the city of Haoran. The difference was that this time, only the forces of the super sects came. The forces of the first-class sects knew that they were not strong enough to participate in the meeting, so they did not participate. There were 18 teams of various forces, and each team had more than 10,000 people. The Zhou dynasty had more than 20,000 people, and there were more than 300,000 people in total. The arrival of these people was a challenge to the Haoranjin sect, and at the same time it was also a deterrent to the Haoranjin sect by the various forces. Although the Haoranjin sect was not afraid of them, they did not dare to be careless. They mobilized 200,000 disciples and 6,000 wuzong to deploy in the city of Haoran. Chapter 74. At the same time, in order to maintain order and stability in the city of Haoran, the Haoranjin sect made it clear to all the major forces that each team could only bring a maximum of 1,000 people into the city. The rest of the people would camp outside the city of Haoran. If they agreed, they could enter the city. If they didn't, they had to leave on the spot. If they dared to make trouble, they shouldn't blame the Haoranjin sect for turning hostile and suppressing them. Although the major forces were dissatisfied with this, they still agreed after careful consideration. After all, they were basically aware of the strength of the Haoranjin sect. If they really fell out with the Haoranjin sect, not to mention whether they could achieve their purpose of coming here, they might not even be able to return alive. Although the strength of the teams from the 18 forces was very strong, and the total number of Marquis Wu realms was more than that of the Haoranjin sect, it shouldn't be forgotten that the Haoranjin sect still had a trump card. As long as the Haoranjin sect was ruthless and wasn't afraid of being hurt, it wouldn't be difficult to suppress them in the end. In the end, 1,000 people from each of the 18 forces entered the city of Haoran and stayed temporarily. Among the 18 superforces, the Devil's Sword sect, the Shura sect, and the Jinbu Gate were hiding to recover their strength because of the Haoranjin sect. Therefore, they didn't come, except for the Zhou dynasty and the other 12 super sects. The other 5 superforces that came were previously unknown to the outside world. When the people from these forces entered the city of Haoran, Yi Tianzong used his spirit to explore the details of these people, especially the 5 forces that suddenly appeared, which were not inferior to the super sections. This investigation allowed him to discover some people who were hiding their strength. Among these 18 forces, other than a total of more than 300 martial marquis realm existences, there were also nearly 40 martial king realm existences. This discovery made Yi Tianzong's heart tremble. As expected, these forces will not give up on their evil intentions and will not allow themselves to be trampled on. More than 300 Marquis Wu and nearly 40 King Wu. If it weren't for me, once these people launch an attack, it would be enough to cause the Hao Ranzhen sect to suffer heavy casualties. King Wu could not stay in the outside world for a long time, but he could hold out for 7 days. As long as they are willing to throw caution to the wind, even I will have to go through a lot of trouble to deal with these people. Unless these people gather together, I am not confident that I can eliminate all of them if they split up and cause trouble. It seems that I have to deter them. Otherwise, who knows what kind of trouble they will cause. Yi Tianzong thought seriously. After making up his mind, Yi Tianzong did not delay and directly went to the residences of the various forces. Yi Tianzong first arrived at the residence of the Zhou dynasty. This time, the team from the Zhou dynasty was led by a prince of the Zhou dynasty and the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty. There were 7 princes and princesses, including Princess Lianyue, who came last time. Yi Tianzong did not enter from the front, but directly entered the manor of the Zhou dynasty through the air. At this time, the leader of the Zhou dynasty, Prince Zhou Xian, the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty, and the 7 princes and princesses who came with them, as well as some Marquis Wu realm cultivators, were all gathered in a spacious room. In the room, there were 4 pale but dignified old men. Prince Zhou Xian, the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty, and the others looked at the 4 old men with respect. Just as these people of the Zhou dynasty were discussing something, Yi Tianzong had already arrived outside the room. Yi Tianzong did not intend to enter the room. He scanned the situation in the room with his spirit, and then directly released his qi, controlling his qi to only cover the room in front of him. In order to impress King Wu and Marquis Wu and really deter them, Yi Tianzong used his real strength. Instead of just releasing an ordinary qi, Yi Tianzong directly triggered a trace of the power he had when he was at his peak before his reincarnation. An unparalleled and irresistible vast qi descended on the room where the dozens of people of the Zhou dynasty were. The sudden and irresistible qi caught everyone in the room off guard. They were pressed to the chairs by this vast and irresistible power and could not move at all, including the 4 pale old men and the dozen Marquis Wu. Yi Tianzong clearly perceived that these 4 old men were King Wu of the Zhou dynasty, so most of the qi and pressure was directed at these 4 old men and the dozen Marquis Wu. Of course, the 4 King Wu and the Marquis Wu, who were suddenly suppressed, would not just wait for death. They tried to get rid of the suppression with their own strength, but they were shocked to find that they could not even move, let alone get rid of it. It was as if there was a mountain pressing on their bodies, and they could not move at all. When everyone in the room was suppressed and could not move, and they were all frightened, Yi Tianzong said outside the room, "What are you here for?" Yi Tianzong's voice rang out in the room, and the dozens of people of the Zhou dynasty all heard it. What was different was that the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty and the other juniors were only shocked when they heard it, while the 4 King Wu and the dozen Marquis Wu, who were targeted by Yi Tianzong, were as if they were being questioned by a god. They wanted to open their mouths to answer, but they were suppressed by Yi Tianzong's qi and could not open their mouths. Yi Tianzong naturally knew the situation of King Wu and Marquis Wu, but he did not withdraw the qi and pressure. Instead, he used some of his primordial spirit power to strengthen the qi and pressure on those King Wu and Marquis Wu. In the room, the 4 King Wu and the dozen Marquis Wu felt that the god who had questioned them was angry because they did not answer the question. In an instant, the qi and pressure on their bodies and minds became heavier, and they could not breathe. Their spirits were also on the verge of collapse. Their pale faces turned red, and their eyes were bloodshot, as if they were going to shed tears of blood. King Wu and the Marquis Wu felt that they would definitely die if this continued, but they had no power to resist. They could only helplessly feel the qi and pressure getting heavier and heavier and wait for death to come. The crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty and the others, who were not targeted by Yi Tianzong, were scared out of their wits when they saw the state of the four King Wu and the Marquis Wu. They were doomed. The crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty and the others wanted to speak, but they were also suppressed by the powerful qi and could not speak. Seeing that it was about time, Yi Tianzong deliberately relaxed the crown prince and the other princes and princesses of the great Zhou dynasty so that they could barely speak. However, to Yi Tianzong's surprise, the first to speak was not the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty, but Princess Linyue of the great Zhou dynasty, who had been here before. Yi Tianzong had some impression of this Princess Linyue, but Yi Tianzong was not interested in having any interaction with the people of the Zhou dynasty more than a year ago. He had only met them a few times and knew this person. Princess Linyue of the great Zhou dynasty was also suppressed by Yi Tianzong's qi and could not move at all. However, under the immense pressure, Princess Linyue stubbornly said, "Young sect master, the seniors of the Zhou dynasty are only here to take care of us juniors and prevent accidents on the way. They have no intention of becoming enemies with the Hao Ranjin sect. Please show mercy, young sect master." Princess Linyue said each word with difficulty. "Oh, is that so?" Yi Tianzong's non-committal voice sounded again. This time, the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty quickly said, "Yes, our Zhou dynasty has no evil intentions. We only want to make a deal with your sect. Young sect master, please don't misunderstand. And I'll believe you for now. If you don't do what you say, then you'll have to bear the consequences." Yi Tianzong's voice sounded again. Then, everyone in the room felt the terrifying qi disappear without a trace. They all collapsed into their chairs and greedily took in large breaths of air, not caring about their image. As for the 4 martial kings and more than 10 martial marquis, they resisted the fear in their hearts and hurriedly adjusted their terrible condition. "This is the young sect master of the Hao Ranjin sect that you mentioned? How can he be so terrifying?" Prince Zhou Xian asked the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty with an ugly expression. The fear in his heart was simply indescribable. Initially, they thought that with the arrival of so many martial marquis and 4 martial king realm ancestors, they would at least be able to intimidate the righteous sect. However, they did not expect that this fellow would be beaten up like a dog by the righteous sect's young sect master. Furthermore, he was able to immobilize all of them with just his aura alone, putting them in a life or death situation. If they were to really fight, they would definitely die. The crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty said with a bitter expression, "Imperial uncle, I also did not expect the Hao Ranjin sect's young sect master to be so terrifying. It seems that we have miscalculated this time. Let's just be at ease and make a deal with the Hao Ranjin sect." Chapter 75. After the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty finished speaking, Prince Zhou Xian did not answer. Instead, he turned around and looked at the 4 ancestors of King Wu. The 4 ancestors of the Zhou dynasty, King Wu, naturally felt Prince Zhou Xian's gaze. However, they could not bring themselves to admit defeat. Thus, they simply closed their eyes and adjusted their breathing, as if they did not care about what was going on around them. Looking at the appearance of his ancestors, Prince Zhou Xian, who was well versed in the ways of the world, naturally understood what they meant. He cursed them in his heart and then said to the crown prince of the great Zhou dynasty, "Well, what you said makes sense. We came here with sincerity to make a deal with the Hao Ranjin sect. We will not participate in other matters." Just as the people of the great Zhou dynasty were intimidated by Yi Tianzong, they put away their schemes and prepared for the trade negotiations a few days later. Yi Tianzong went to the residences of the various forces one by one and forcefully intimidated the martial kings and martial marquises of all the forces. After going through the terrifying experience of not being able to resist and facing the dilemma of life and death, the experts of all the forces suppressed the arrogance in their hearts and extinguished their original thoughts of making trouble. They quieted down. Of course, even though the experts of Marquis Wu and King Wu had quieted down, it did not mean that the major forces would obediently admit defeat. This time, each of the super forces had a large number of elite disciples accompanying them. Since they could not count on the older ones, they would compete with the younger ones to see whose disciples were more powerful. Naturally, the Hao Ranjin sect was the target of all the challenges. The higher-ups of these forces were all hoping to vent the grievances and oppression they had suffered from Yi Tianzong on the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect through their own disciples. In the face of the challenges from the disciples of the other forces, the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect naturally would not admit defeat. No matter how many people came, they would accept all the challenges. The 20 arenas in the city of Haoran were full every day. In addition to the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect, the disciples of the other forces also challenged each other. From time to time, there would be casualties. Although the major forces were distressed by the loss of their own disciples, fists and feet had no eyes. For the sake of the reputation of the sect, they could only accept such an outcome. In the 5-day arena competition, all the forces, including the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect, had some wins and some losses. However, in the end, the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect still won over the disciples of the other forces. Regarding this, the higher-ups of the major forces were even more depressed and aggrieved. The older ones were suppressed by the Hao Ranjin sect, and the younger ones were also defeated by the Hao Ranjin sect. This was really infuriating. However, no matter how depressed and aggrieved they were, they still had to do business. These major forces had secretly contacted the Hao Ranjin sect these days. They had also reached an agreement with the Hao Ranjin sect about the method to break the seal of heaven and earth. However, the other forces excluded the people of the Zhou dynasty, which led to the situation of the Zhou dynasty, causing trouble during the negotiations later. After a few days, the Hao Ranjin sect informed the people of the major forces to go to the city Lord Mansion for negotiations. In the spacious manner, the people of the Hao Ranjin sect and the people of the major forces took their seats. Then, as the host, Yi Haoran opened his mouth and said some polite words. After that, they began to get down to business. The people of the Foreign Affairs Hall of the Hao Ranjin sect began to negotiate with the major forces to determine the price that the major forces would have to pay in order to obtain the method to break the seal of heaven and earth. This time, the major forces came with a huge lineup. They brought a large amount of spiritual herbs, spiritual medicines, and various materials. However, bringing so much did not mean that everything would benefit the Hao Ranjin sect. The people of the Hao Ranjin sect naturally hoped that the more the better. They demanded an exorbitant price. However, the people of the major forces would not agree to it. Thus, they wrangled with the people of the Hao Ranjin sect and tried to lower the price. In order to pay as little as possible, the forces that were originally part of the super sects among the 18 forces had secretly joined forces. A few hidden super sects had also joined forces. Both sides had communicated beforehand. During the negotiations this time, other than the Zhou dynasty, the forces that were not part of the Hao Ranjin sect's conditions worked together to lower the price. This made the negotiations very difficult for the Hao Ranjin sect side. Just when the two sides were in a deadlock and the atmosphere was tense, the Zhou dynasty, who had been watching from the sidelines at the beginning, began to stir things up. Previously, the actions of the other sects and forces could not be hidden from the Zhou dynasty and the Hao Ranjin sect. The Hao Ranjin sect did not pay much attention to this. In any case, The method to break the seal of heaven and earth would have to be revealed sooner or later. Otherwise, they would become the target of public criticism. Thus, it was not a big deal to give more spiritual herbs, spiritual medicines, and other resources. On the other hand, the people of the Zhou dynasty were very dissatisfied. They were all here to negotiate a deal. You people excluded me and secretly joined forces. Where did you put me? Since you rejected me, did not give me face, and were hostile to the Zhou dynasty, then don't blame me for undermining you. Wasn't it just some spiritual herbs and materials? The Zhou dynasty had plenty of them. The things they brought were not even 1% of the dynasty's reserves. The Zhou dynasty did not care at all. Therefore, when the negotiations between the Haoranjin sect and the other sects and forces were in a deadlock, Prince Zhou Xian of the Zhou dynasty directly agreed to the Haoranjin sect's conditions. He would give all the spiritual herbs and other resources they brought to the Haoranjin sect. When the Zhou dynasty spoke, the people of the other sects and forces were stunned. They looked at Prince Zhou Xian and the others from the Zhou dynasty with hatred. They wished they could skin them alive. The people of the Haoranjin sect were overjoyed. Yi Haoran said with a smile, "Prince Zhou is really straightforward. Our Haoranjin sect likes to make deals with straightforward people." Following which, Yi Haoran turned to look at the other 17 superpowers representatives, who all wore ugly expressions, and said, "Since none of you can agree to our conditions, please continue to consider our offer. I'll head to another location with Prince Zhou and inform him of the method to break the world seal, as well as the precautions to take." With that, Yi Haoran stood up and was about to leave with Prince Zhou, who was beaming with joy. Seeing this, the people of the other sects and forces immediately panicked. How could this be? How could he leave and talk to the people of the Zhou dynasty alone? This kind of thing had to be said in public and in front of everyone. Otherwise, no one would know if what he said was the same or not. Therefore, the other sects and forces no longer insisted. They all changed their positions and agreed to the Haoranjin sect's conditions. However, each sect and force had different amounts of spiritual herbs and other resources. Haoranjin sect also took a step back. In the end, they agreed to use the sect with the least amount of resources as the benchmark. All the other sects, including the Zhou dynasty, would pay the same amount of resources to the Haoranjin sect in exchange for the method to break the seal of heaven and earth. In the end, the other sects and Haoranjin sect reached an agreement. In the courtyard of the manor, the Haoranjin sect told the other sects and forces in detail about the method to break the seal of heaven and earth. In general, there were 2 points that Yi Tianzong had concluded. First, they had to be strong enough. Second, they had to use a kind of power between heaven and earth as a medium to communicate with the original consciousness of heaven and earth to obtain permission. This was to avoid being oppressed by heaven and earth when breaking the seal. At the same time, they didn't avoid answering the questions of the other sects and forces. They answered all the questions except those related to the Haoranjin sect. After comparing what they had seen and heard when Yi Tianzong broke the seal of heaven and earth and the method they had heard, the people of the other sects and forces confirmed it again and again. It wasn't until the people of the Haoranjin sect became impatient that they finally believed the words of the Haoranjin sect. After getting what they wanted, the people of the other sects and forces didn't stay for long. After only 1 day, they packed up and started to leave. Of course, before they left, these sects and forces deliberately asked the Haoranjin sect for the complete version of the Haoran Sutra. The people of these sects and forces were very interested in the Haoran Sutra written by Yi Tianzong. After all, according to the people of the Haoranjin sect, the Haoran Sutra was an important medium that could mobilize the heaven and earth's Haoran morality. Regarding this, the Haoranjin sect wasn't stingy and readily agreed to the requests of the other sects and forces. Each of the sects and forces gave away 1,000 copies of the complete version of the Haoran Sutra. Of course, This complete version was only what the other sects and forces thought was the complete version. The true complete version of the Haran Sutra was divided into 7 major categories: general principles, country chapters, individual chapters, sect chapters, family chapters, comprehensive chapters, and cultivation chapters. Each major category was further divided into different subcategories. The content was profound and vast, and it was all-encompassing. The Haran Sutra given away by the Hao Ranjen sect only contained the general principles: country chapters, individual chapters, sect chapters, and family chapters. Some of the important parts were also castrated, leaving only the theoretical parts. In any case, the Haran Sutra was only suitable for the Hao Ranjen sect. If other sects and forces wanted to rely on the castrated Haran morality to mobilize the heaven and earth's Haran morality, it would be a joke. People with bad intentions and ulterior motives wouldn't be able to gain the approval of the heaven and earth's Haran morality. Without Yi Tianzong's Tao of the Haran morality, they wouldn't be able to take the initiative to use the Haran morality. On the other hand, giving away the Haran Sutra to the other sects and forces could accelerate the spread of the philosophy and spirit of the Hao Ranjen sect. Chapter 76. Long before this, the higher-ups of Hao Ranjen sect had already formulated a plan to spread the emasculated Haran true scripture throughout the entire Central Plains. They wanted to popularize the Hao Ranjen sect's Haran righteous path and its teachings to the lower levels of the profound spirit world, making it a new and universal teaching concept. They wanted to continuously gain the recognition and faith of ordinary people and martial artists, making the Haran righteous path the mainstream concept of the profound spirit world. This was a very long and arduous plan, but the higher-ups of Hao Ranjen sect were very clear in their support of this plan. After the various major powers left, Hao Ranjen sect resumed its normal operations and developed in an orderly manner according to the established plan. The most important plan was to increase the strength of the Hao Ranjen sect. According to Yi Tianzong's plan, when the Hao Ranjen sect entered the new environment, everyone's cultivation speed would begin to slow down or even reach a bottleneck. This was especially true for his family, Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoren, and the others. When they reached the peak of Marquis Wu, that would be the time to break the seal again. Not only did the Hao Ranjen sect immerse themselves in development, all the other powers were taking advantage of the initial stage of the change in the environment to develop their own strength. Even the dozens of sects that had been taught a lesson by the Hao Ranjen sect a year ago temporarily stopped their plans to take revenge on the Hao Ranjen sect. The various powers that had obtained the method to break the seal from the Hao Ranjen sect did not make any overt moves in the following days. They also took the opportunity to develop their strength. Ever since the Hao Ranjen sect broke the seal a year ago, the Hao Ranjen sect had taken the first step to becoming a holy land. Now that the outside world was relatively stable, the sect was developing steadily according to the original plan. Yi Tianzong, who had nothing else to do, naturally did not stay idle. He brought Ling Xinyue to the immortal mansion to cultivate. Yi Tianzong did not tell Ling Xinyue about the immortal mansion in detail. He only told her that the immortal mansion was a heavenly abode treasure that he had obtained in his previous life and that it could assist in cultivation. He did not say anything else, and Ling Xinyue did not ask. In her heart, her greatest wish was to be able to accompany Yi Tianzong. Nothing else mattered. This was also the reason why Yi Tianzong doted on and liked Ling Xinyue. In the vast expanse immortal abode, the flow of time and the concentration of essence qi were 4 times that of the outside world. Naturally, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue's cultivation speed was much faster than the outside world. In less than 2 years in the outside world, more than 6 years had passed in the immortal mansion. Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue had finally cultivated to the peak of the Marquis Wu realm. In the superior environment of the immortal mansion, Ling Xinyue's clear ice spirit body was finally fully activated. After activating the clear ice spirit body, Ling Xinyue was reborn. She looked more pure, holy and peerless. Her martial arts aptitude had also improved significantly. Her potential had increased greatly, and her cultivation speed had also become faster. Her life level had also improved by 1 level, and she had a stronger foundation. Yi Tianzong was very satisfied with this. He often could not help but be intimate with Ling Xinyue. After cultivating to the peak of the Marquis Wu realm, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue were not in a hurry to leave the immortal mansion. Instead, they continued to cultivate in the immortal mansion, accumulating their own jinqi and cultivating their physical realm. Of course, they were not in a hurry as before. They were very leisurely and comfortable. In addition to cultivating in the immortal mansion, Yi Tianzong did not only care about being intimate with Ling Xinyue. Instead, he was looking for the elixirs he needed in the immortal mansion. The next realm after the Marquis Wu realm was the Wu King realm. The Wu King realm was a very important realm. It was also an important watershed for warriors with special constitutions to widen the gap between them and ordinary people. It determined their future in martial arts. Beside him, Ling Xinyue had already activated her clear ice spirit body. Although the foundation of her constitution was still very weak, after all, there were strong and weak constitutions. But as long as she cultivated the divine martial sky skill in the immortal mansion, the origin and foundation of her clear ice spirit body would gradually be strengthened. He did not have to worry about it for a short time. However, his father, mother, grandfather, and others still had the constitution of ordinary people. Although they cultivated the divine martial sky skill and their strength was 10 times stronger than ordinary people, it did not change the fact that they were still ordinary people. The level of their life did not change. In order for his father, mother, and others to still not be weaker than others in martial arts cultivation in the future, Yi Tianzong could only think of ways to let them have special constitutions. There were countless special constitutions in the universe. No one could figure out how many there were. But according to the potential of the constitutions, they were generally divided into ordinary level, which was the constitution of an ordinary person, spiritual level, profound level, divine level, king level, emperor level, supreme level, and celestial level. Starting from the spirit body, it was considered a special constitution. Moreover, a low-level constitution could be promoted to a higher level if it met the right opportunity and conditions. Every constitution was generally divided into 4 levels: low, medium, high, and peak. Ling Xinyue's clear ice spirit body was considered a high spiritual level constitution according to the levels. Yi Tianzong's constitution was a low celestial level constitution. Yi Tianzong had traveled through many worlds for thousands of years. Every life's cultivation and most of the heavenly treasures were all forged according to a special secret method. Naturally, there was no lack of the immortal mansion's boundless energy that was constantly influencing and transforming his constitution. Yi Tianzong's divine martial sky skill contained the method to cultivate a special constitution. However, the current environment of the profound spirit world did not allow Yi Haoran and the others to cultivate a special constitution. Even if they broke the seal once, the concentration of heaven and earth origin qi was far from enough. The amount of energy and resources needed to cultivate a special constitution and activate a special constitution was not the same. If the amount of energy and resources needed to activate a low spirit level special physique was 1, then the amount of energy and resources needed to cultivate a low spirit level special physique from scratch was at least 30. The difference was too many times. Since the current environment did not allow it, Yi Tianzong could only think of a way from his previous collection of pills. Fortunately, after searching, Yi Tianzong still managed to find a lot of pills. It was enough for dozens of people to cultivate a special constitution. After finding the medicinal pills he needed, Yi Tianzong did not rush out of the heaven's expanse immortal abode. He asked Yi Yuanshan and the others to quickly consume the medicinal pills and cultivate. It was not an urgent matter for now. Right now, the more important matter for the Hao Ranzhen sect was the matter of the martial arts cultivation method. In the past, Yi Tianzong had improved the original Haoren sword sect's cultivation method and divided it into different levels. The fundamental body forging technique corresponded to the martial disciple realm. The primordial tendon changing technique corresponded to the martial artist, martial warrior, and martial master realms. The limitless mysterious technique corresponded to the three realms of Wu Ling, Wu Zong, and Marquis Wu. As the seal of heaven and earth continued to be broken in the future, the upper limit of the martial arts cultivation method would increase. The most important thing now was to create a cultivation method suitable for the Hao Ranzhen sect's Marquis Wu. Moreover, this method of dividing the martial arts cultivation method into different levels was not suitable for the future development of the Hao Ranzhen sect. Therefore, after careful consideration, Yi Tianzong walked out of the immortal mansion and took a lot of martial arts cultivation methods from the Hao Ranzhen sect's hidden sutra pavilion. Then he returned to the immortal mansion. With the concept of the Haoren Sutra as the core, he combined the advantages of many martial arts cultivation methods and some of the mysteries of the martial arts and secret methods in the divine martial heavenly skill. After 7 months, he finally created 2 sets of cultivation methods. One of them was the Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation, which could be directly cultivated to the peak of the mysterious realm Wu Zun. The Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation was divided into 9 levels, corresponding to the 9 martial arts realms from the basic martial disciple all the way to the mysterious realm Wu Zun. The Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation was the foundation of another cultivation method created by Yi Tianzong, the Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation. The 2 sets of cultivation methods were of the same origin. The Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation was the cultivation method of the martial arts cultivation method after breaking through to the mysterious realm Wusheng. At present, Yi Tianzong had only created the first 3 levels. Anyway, there was still a long way to go for the rest. Not only did the Haoren Heavenly Dipper incantation contain cultivation methods, but it also had matching martial arts techniques such as sword techniques, saber techniques, palm techniques, fist techniques, body techniques, alchemy techniques, secret methods that could instantly increase one's strength, and so on. It was 2 levels higher than the current Hao Ranzhen sect's muscle, tendon changing, and limitless Taishian. Chapter 77. After creating the Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique, Yi Tianzong handed it over to Yi Haoren and let Yi Haoren handle it himself. Yi Haoren, who had obtained the technique, was naturally very happy. Their family naturally didn't have to worry about not having a follow-up technique for cultivating the divine martial heavenly technique. However, in the past, Yi Tianzong had only improved the technique for the disciples to cultivate up to the Marquis Wu realm. Yi Haoren was thinking about when to look for Yi Tianzong and ask him to think of a way. He didn't expect that before he could say anything, Yi Tianzong had already created the follow-up technique, and it was even better than the previous one. After Yi Haoren obtained the technique, he didn't delay any further. Instead, he gathered all the hall masters, elders, and grand elders to announce the Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique that Yi Tianzong had created. Of course, they didn't announce it all at once. Only those who had reached a certain level of authority had the qualifications to obtain the entire content of the Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique in advance. The rest could only obtain the technique needed for the next realm. Subsequently, after the Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique was announced to the entire sect, the entire Hao Ranzhen sect once again set off a craze for changing the technique. Regarding this, everyone in the Hao Ranzhen sect was very happy and didn't have any negative feelings. After all, when Yi Tianzong created the Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique, he had considered the problem of changing the technique. The Haoren True Heavenly Dipper technique that he created was of the same origin as the previous tendon-changing technique and the limitless Taishian technique. It was just that it was more optimized than the previous technique of the same realm, so it wasn't troublesome to change the technique. Who wouldn't be happy to be able to cultivate a better martial arts technique? The Hao-Ranjin sect did not leave the basic body forging technique, tendons changing technique, and Taishian limitless skill in the suture depository. Instead, they first promoted the basic body forging technique to the entire territory ruled by the Hao-Ranjin sect so that everyone could cultivate it. They promoted the tendons changing technique to the martial warrior realm and below in the public school. In the end, all three sets of cultivation methods were to be used as the main cultivation methods of Haoran's side courtyard, so that the Hao-Ranjin sect could nurture new and outstanding blood. He had switched to a better cultivation method, and his strength had increased again. The cultivation atmosphere of the entire Hao-Ranjin sect was even stronger, and the sect was flourishing. Everything was in order. When Yi Tianzong saw that the Hao-Ranjin sect didn't have much to do, he urged Yi Haoran, Yi Yuanshan, and the other family members to speed up their cultivation and strive to reach the peak of the Marquis Wu as soon as possible. Then they would take the spirit pills and cultivate the special physique before the next time the seal was broken. Yi Tianzong also told Yi Haoran and the others about the special physique and its secrets. Yi Haoran and the others naturally didn't dare to be careless or negligent when it came to the future of their martial arts. Therefore, they handed over the trivial matters to their subordinates to handle, and then went into closed-door cultivation. With Yi Tianzong's endless supply of resources and spirit pills, Yi Haoran, Yi Haoyun, Li Qingshi, and the others had successfully cultivated to the peak of the Marquis Wu in just 3 years' time. In addition to the support of Yi Tianzong's endless supply of spirit pills, the will of heaven and earth's favor was also an important factor for such a fast cultivation progress. In any case, Yi Tianzong and the Hao-Ranjin sect had broken the seal of heaven and earth for the first time in millions of years, preventing the continued decline of heaven and earth, even if it was only the simplest layer of the seal on the outermost layer. Therefore, the will of heaven and earth would naturally favor the Hao-Ranjin sect, who had made a contribution. Although it was only a very small amount of attention, it was enough to make the cultivation of the people of the Hao-Ranjin sect much smoother and faster than the people of other forces. When Yi Haoran and the others were concentrating on their cultivation, some bad things also happened in the Hao-Ranjin sect, but they were all resolved by Yi Tianzong. With the rise and development of the Hao-Ranjin sect, a group of martial arts cultivation families would naturally rise within the territory ruled by the Hao-Ranjin sect. These martial arts cultivation families were basically the families of some elders, deacons, or disciples of the Hao-Ranjin sect. With the rapid development of the Hao-Ranjin sect, the strength of these families also increased rapidly by relying on the relationships within the sect. Once they became powerful, they would naturally become tyrannical, bully the weak, and abuse their power for personal gain, etc. Once, when a certain family colluded with an elder of the assessment hall to secretly manipulate the quota for the promotion of an inner disciple, they were discovered by Yi Tianzong, who was patrolling the sect with his primordial spirit. Naturally, Yi Tianzong would not tolerate this. Knowing that this was not a coincidence, Yi Tianzong instructed the people of the Tiangang Pavilion and the Punishment Hall to cooperate with each other and secretly investigate the unfairness within the sect. After Yi Tianzong found out the truth, he then launched a swift and decisive campaign of rectification within the Hao-Ranjin sect. Because of the prior investigation, Yi Tianzong caught a total of tens of thousands of elders, deacons, and disciples who were involved in forming cliques and various unfairness within the sect in just 2 days. Then, Yi Tianzong announced the crimes of these arrested people and publicly punished them. Naturally, the disciples of the Hao-Ranjin sect supported him. After punishing these people, Yi Tianzong did not stop. Even the martial arts cultivation families involved in these people were not spared. He also carried out severe punishments and many families were confiscated and exterminated. The ruthless and bloody methods of punishment not only established the dignity of the sect, but also ruthlessly suppressed the arrogance of the martial arts cultivation families within the Hao-Ranjin sect. They knew who was the ruler of this area. After cleaning up the internal pests, the development of the Hao-Ranjin sect was more healthy and orderly. The disciples were also more united. Everything was developing in a good direction. After Yi Haoran and the others cultivated to the peak of the Marquis Wu, Yi Tianzong gave them the spirit pills. These spirit pills were refined by Yi Tianzong before he reincarnated into the profound spirit world using various heavenly treasures. The spirit pills contained a huge amount of medicinal power, enough to support Yi Haoran and the others to cultivate their special physiques. Yi Tianzong watched as Yi Yuanshan and the others cultivated their special physiques according to the secret technique of the divine martial heavenly technique. Among them, Yi Haoran, Yi Haoyun, and Yi Yuanshan cultivated the true Wu Ling physique, while Su Mingxin, Li Qingya, Li Qingshi, and Zi Yunxian cultivated the pure immortal spirit physique. The true Wu Ling physique and the pure immortal spirit physique started out as middle spiritual level physiques. The secret technique of cultivating special physiques in the divine martial heavenly technique was created by Yi Tianzong after he comprehended some of the secret techniques of condensing heavenly level physiques that were passed down to him by the immortal mansion. This kind of secret technique of condensing special physiques would not allow the martial artist to cultivate a specific physique. Instead, it would gradually transform into a special physique that was suitable for the martial artist according to their own characteristics. Seeing that Yi Haoran and the others had successfully cultivated special physiques, Yi Tianzong also let out a sigh of relief. He instructed them to continue cultivating the divine, martial, heavenly technique to deepen the foundation of their physiques so that they could upgrade their physiques in the future. After that, Yi Tianzong announced that he would continue his closed-door cultivation and return to the immortal mansion to accompany Ling Xinyue. In the following few years, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue spent their time cultivating and being lovey-dovey with each other. They were very happy. For years passed in the outside world. Yi Tianzong would appear once every half a year and patrol the sect. After 7 days, he would return to the immortal mansion. For years in the outside world was 16 years in the immortal mansion. In the immortal mansion, there were all kinds of extreme environments that aided in cultivation. With the help of all kinds of extreme environments, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue's true essence and body had already cultivated to the limit that the profound spirit world could accommodate. In order to break through the limits of the profound spirit world and reach a higher realm, Yi Tianzong could only become an intermediate disciple of the immortal mansion. Only then could he use the power of the immortal mansion to shield himself from the restrictions of the outside world. However, as a primary disciple, Yi Tianzong did not have that authority. Chapter 78. In the past 16 years in the immortal mansion, apart from cultivating and accompanying Ling Xinyue, Yi Tianzong also took the time to create a set of energy-gathering array and a mountain-protecting array based on the terrain of Tiangang Peak. As the name implied, the energy-gathering array was an array that gathered the qi of heaven and earth. After Yi Tianzong directed the disciples of Hao-Ranjin sect to finish setting up the energy-gathering array that enveloped Tiangang Peak, the concentration of the qi of heaven and earth in the entire Tiangang Peak and its surroundings increased by more than 3 times, which made the Hao-Ranjin sect overjoyed. As for the mountain-protecting array, Yi Tianzong only directed the disciples of Hao-Oran to set it up. He did not test the effects of the array, mainly because there was no need. For now, and for a long time, there should not be any enemies who would attack the Hao-Ranjin sect. Time passed. It had been 10 years since the last time the seal of heaven and earth was broken. In these 10 years, the number of people under the Righteous Path's rule had already exceeded 200 million. As for the Hao-Ranjin sect, in addition to Yi Qingxian and the other 75 Marquis Wu experts who had walked out of the Arcana territory, the Haoranjin sect had newly promoted more than 150 elders at the initial stage of Marquis Wu. Now, excluding Yi Tianzong and his family of 9, the total number of Marquis Wu experts in Haoranjin sect had reached nearly 290. The total number of Wu Zongjing experts had reached more than 20,000. The number of Wu Zongjing experts had reached about 500. The number of disciples who had advanced below Wu Zongjing was in the tens of thousands. The overall strength of the Haoranjin sect had once again increased by several times. Not only that, due to the complete disclosure of the basic body forging technique and the teaching of the primordial tendon changing technique in the public school, there were no ordinary people in the Haoranjin sect's territory other than the underage children and the disabled elderly. The lowest level of the 180 million people was the basic martial disciple, and the number of people in the martial warrior realm was as high as 30 million. The number of Haoran villas that were built outside the Haoranjin sect's jurisdiction had also reached more than 100. In total, they had recruited more than 600,000 disciples. Not only had they greatly expanded the influence of the Haoranjin sect, but they had also provided tens of thousands of outstanding disciples for Tiangang Peak. However, in the last 3 years of the past 10 years, the Qi of heaven and earth, which had been slowly increasing since the seal of heaven and earth was broken 10 years ago, no longer changed. In the last 2 years, the cultivation speed of everyone in the Haoranjin sect generally slowed down. From this, it could be seen that the heavens help state that the Haoranjin sect had obtained after breaking the seal of heaven and earth had been exhausted. It was beginning to return to its normal state. Yi Tianzong had also noticed this change. However, in order to let the heaven and earth and the people of the Haoranjin sect have a period of consolidation, Yi Tianzong delayed for another 2 years before he began to break the seal of heaven and earth again. Otherwise, he could have broken the next layer of the seal 2 years ago. However, in the last 2 years, Yi Tianzong and Yi Haoran decided to wake up the more than 70 Kingwu of the Yi clan who had been sleeping in the Haoran secret land twice. This was so that they could enjoy the benefits of breaking the seal of heaven and earth. As for the Kingwu who had been hostile to the Yi clan, they were all killed by Yi Tianzong outside the secret land after they had been awakened. Yi Tianzong and the Haoranjin sect were not in a hurry to break the seal of heaven and earth. They were still consolidating and stabilizing. However, the other major forces who had obtained the method to break the seal of heaven and earth were not willing to be left out. They all began to make various preparations and efforts to break the seal of heaven and earth in advance. At the same time, they also closely watched the movements of the Haoranjin sect. They each sent out a force to be stationed 2,000 li away from the Haoranjin sect as a deterrent. They were afraid that the Haoranjin sect would break the seal of heaven and earth again. Yi Tianzong and the higher-ups of the Haoranjin sect were well aware of the attention and small movements of the major forces. However, they did not take it to heart. These major forces probably would not have thought that if the Haoranjin sect wanted to break the seal of heaven and earth again, they would not need to make such a big fuss like the last time. The last time they made such a big fuss, they specially chose a day when the sun was the highest. The entire Haoranjin sect and the people under its jurisdiction were mobilized. This was to ensure the success of the plan to the greatest extent. Now that they had a successful experience, they did not need to mobilize so many people, nor did they need to specially choose a time. The last time Yi Tianzong broke the seal of heaven and earth, the scene could be seen by everyone in the secret land. Yi Tianzong also found out later. Therefore, when the second time they broke the seal of heaven and earth, they only needed to mobilize the disciples of the Haoranjin sect. When the time came, they only needed to use the biennial Dragon Phoenix list tournament as a cover to gather all the disciples of the Haoran sect together. In the past 10 years, the Haoranjin sect had carried out this kind of operation 4 times. Now it was time for the 5th time. According to the usual practice, the biennial Dragon Phoenix list tournament of Hao Ranjin sect had begun again. Due to the large increase in the number of disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect, the number of Dragon Phoenix list tournament slots for each rank had increased to 108. There were a total of 540 slots for the outer, inner, elite, core, and personal disciple rankings. The Dragon Phoenix list tournament lasted for half a month before it came to an end. The various major forces were quite familiar with the Dragon Phoenix list tournament of Hao Ranjin sect. In the beginning, they paid more attention to it and even sent teams to observe the tournament. However, as the Hao Ranjin sect held the tournament again and again, they did not do anything else. More importantly, they were defeated by the disciples of the Hao Ranjin sect every time. Feeling sick of it, the various major forces stopped coming to observe the tournament and relaxed. However, the various major forces did not expect that the Hao Ranjin sect would do something else this time. After the Dragon Phoenix list tournament, all the disciples of the Hao Oran sect did not leave. Instead, they once again came to the place outside the Haran city where the seal of heaven and earth was broken 10 years ago. Everyone in the Hao Ranjin sect was very experienced and quickly arranged themselves in a formation. After everything was ready, Yi Tianzong followed the same process. First, he broke through to the Wu King realm. Then, under the watch and support of the people of the Hao Ranjin sect, he used the heaven and earth Haran Chi to break through another layer of the seal. The upper limit of the profound spirit world's martial arts was raised to the Wu King realm. The profound spirit world once again expanded by nearly 10 times. At the same time, a lot of energy was fed back to Yi Tianzong and everyone in the Hao Ranjin sect. Yi Tianzong's physique level had reached the heavenly level. There were 129,600 acupoints in his body. With the help of the enormous energy fed back by the will of heaven and earth, he directly opened 1/3 of the acupoints and reached the middle stage of the Wu King realm. Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoran, and the others directly opened more than half of their acupoints, and their martial arts realm reached the late stage of the Wu King realm. The more than 70 Wu King realm and more than 60 Marquis Wu realm awakened from the Arcana realm one after another to make up for the loss of their origin and foundation. Once again, there was hope for a breakthrough. Yi Qingxian and the others, who were the first to awaken and received the feedback of heaven and earth, all broke through to the early stage of the Wu King realm and opened up a different number of acupoints. The remaining elders, deacons, and disciples all at least broke through a small realm. There were also tens of thousands of people who broke through the bottleneck of a major realm. Overall, the strength of the Hao Ranjin sect increased by several times. Chapter 79. Not only did the members of the Hao Ranjin sect who had participated directly outside of Haran City receive feedback from the heavens and earth, their strength also increased. Countless people who had participated indirectly in the Haran City and recited the Haran Song of Righteousness also received feedback from the heavens and earth. Regardless of whether they practiced the basic body forging techniques or the primordial tendon-changing technique, their strength also increased. The second biggest change was that the seal of heaven and earth was broken once again. The profound spirit world expanded by nearly 10 times, and the density of the chi of heaven and earth doubled. As time passed, the density of the chi of heaven and earth would slowly increase. As the center, the Hao Ranjin sect's territory expanded by more than 10 times. The area under their jurisdiction expanded to a radius of 15,000 miles. Tiangang Peak once again rose by a few hundred feet, becoming even more vast and majestic. The Haran mountain range behind it expanded to a radius of 6,000 miles. The forest was lush and verdant, and it was even more serene and mysterious. The seal of heaven and earth was broken once again. The direct beneficiaries, the Hao Ranjin sect, were very happy, but the other powers were very unhappy. Every time the seal of heaven and earth was broken, the various powers knew about the benefits. Everyone wanted to take advantage of these benefits. Didn't they see how the Haurangian sect's strength increased greatly the last time they broke the seal of heaven and earth? Therefore, after digesting the benefits of the seal of heaven and earth, the various powers began to make their own preparations. They wanted to be the first to break the seal of heaven and earth again, and also to increase their strength by leaps and bounds. In addition, they also had to guard against the Haurangian sect. They could not let the Haurangian sect get ahead of the other powers. Since the Haurangian sect had already obtained the benefits of the seal of heaven and earth, they could not let the Haurangian sect get the upper hand again. However, they didn't expect that despite all their precautions, they still couldn't prevent it. Even if all the major forces sent out a force to interfere with the righteous sect, the righteous sect still managed to take the lead again right under their noses. When the Haurangian sect broke the seal of heaven and earth, and when the profound spirit world began to expand, the various great powers guessed that it was most likely because of the Haurangian sect. This was because in these past few years, other than guarding against the Haurangian sect, the various great powers were also on guard against each other. They all had a rough understanding of each other. At the very least, none of the great powers were able to draw upon the power of heaven and earth. Only the Haurangian sect had the ability to do so. Sure enough, not long after, the various great powers sent people to the Haurangian sect to scout for information returned with news. Indeed, the Haurangian sect had broken the seal of heaven and earth once again. And this time, the Haurangian sect did not make a big fuss. They only used the biennial Dragon Phoenix ranking tournament to gather all the disciples to complete this task. Because of this, the various great powers could not sit still anymore. They all sent people to the Haurangian sect to question why the Haurangian sect had broken the seal of heaven and earth without permission. Why was this operation different from the previous one? Why was the method different from the one they had told them? Did the Haurangian sect lie to them? Faced with the various great powers' questions and difficulties, the Haurangian sect did not show any signs of weakness. They righteously refuted the various great powers' questions. Anyone can break the seal of heaven and earth. There's no need to inform you, and there's no need to ask for your permission. As for the two different methods, it's because you didn't ask clearly. The first time, we made a big fuss in order to ensure the highest probability of success. The second time, we simplified the preparation work because we had experience and confidence. Since you didn't ask at that time, the Haurangian sect naturally has no obligation to take the initiative to tell you. If you're not convinced, you can fight. After sending away the people from the various great powers, Yi Hauran said angrily and worriedly in the main hall of Hauran Hall, when he thought of the gloomy and cold eyes of the people from the various great powers before they left, he said, "Once these people leave, we'll be in trouble." Yi Haoyun snorted and said, "These bastards, they can't do something they can't do, but they don't want to see others succeed. They should all be destroyed. Aren't they just looking for trouble? No matter what kind of trouble or conspiracy, the Haurangian sect will take it. With our current strength, there's nothing to be afraid of. If they dare to look for trouble with us, won't we add to their troubles as well?" Yi Tianzong said indifferently, "This is normal. No one or power wants to see others gradually become stronger and surpass themselves. If I can't do it, you can't do it either." This kind of selfish mentality is very common in the cultivation world. In order to restrict our development, in addition to targeting us on the surface, these great powers will definitely come up with all kinds of tricks. However, Uncle is right. These great powers each have their own ulterior motives. It's impossible for them to unite. With our current strength, we really don't need to be afraid of any challenges. No matter what kind of conspiracy they have, we'll take it one by one. In addition, we have to give them some trouble. It's impolite not to reciprocate. At this time, Wang Li, the hallmaster of the Merit Hall, said, "That's right. Do you think the Haurangian sect is so easy to bully? If these great powers dare to look for trouble, we'll let them know what it means to reap what they sow. Humph! After Wang Li finished speaking, the other hallmasters and elders present also spoke one after another, saying that they would teach the great powers a lesson. With the rise of the righteous sect, these palace masters and elders with real power became more and more arrogant. Naturally, there was a sense of pride in their hearts. Now that they were threatened by the great powers and even wanted to look for trouble, they were already very angry. If the Hao Ranjin sect's strength was not enough, they could only endure it for the sake of the big picture. However, now that the Hao Ranjin sect's strength had increased rapidly again, catching up with the Zhou dynasty and leaving all the super sects behind, what was there to be afraid of? If they dared to look for trouble, they would be done for. Just as the great powers were plotting how to deal with the Hao Ranjin sect, and the Hao Ranjin sect was also preparing for battle, the effects of breaking the heaven and earth seal twice in a row also showed some results. In a hidden valley in the eastern part of the Central Plains, 7 people with strong auras and dignified expressions gathered here. After talking with each other for a while, the 7 of them finally came to the depths of the valley, facing a mountain wall. The 7 of them each took out a piece of broken jade talisman, then stood on one side according to a special position and poured the energy in their bodies into the jade talisman. Then the 7 pieces of broken jade talisman flew into the air and formed a complete jade talisman. The complete jade talisman flashed with a 7-colored light, then shot a 7-colored light toward the mountain wall in front of them. The mountain wall in front of them trembled and disappeared, replaced by a void door. The 7 people below looked at each other, then flew into the void door one after another. After more than an hour, the 7 people who had entered the void door came out again, followed by dozens of middle-aged men wearing 7-colored clothes. These middle-aged men did not look as stiff as when they had just woken up. The 7 people at the beginning said respectfully to the middle-aged man in the lead, "We welcome the ancestors to see the light of day again. Now that the world is changing, there are signs of returning to the ancient times. After some discussion, we have decided to awaken the ancestors. Please give us your orders." The middle-aged man in the lead said thoughtfully, "Your decision is good. Since the heaven and earth are no longer in decline and have begun to recover, it is time for our 7 invincible sect to see the light of day again. There is no need to rush now. Let us familiarize ourselves with the current environment before making any plans. Let's go to the 7 invincible mountain first. Then you can begin to reorganize your sections." The 7 people all agreed. Not only here, but in the Central Plains, the western regions, the northern border, and the southern wastelands, similar scenes were happening. One by one, the huge forces that had been hiding in the various secret realms and grotto heavens when the heaven and earth were in decline began to appear again. After these various forces that had reappeared understood the current heaven and earth environment, they would no longer keep a low profile. In order to obtain more space for development, they would definitely have conflicts with the current forces. As the initiator of breaking the seal of the heaven and earth and reversing the decline of the heaven and earth, the Hao Ranjin sect would definitely become the target of these forces. The peaceful days of the Hao Ranjin sect would be gone forever. Chapter 81. Inside the Hao Ranjin sect, Yi Tianzong and his family gathered together again. Yi Tianzong said to Yi Haoran, "Father, breaking the seal of heaven and earth this time will not only be targeted by the major forces. According to my guess, it is very likely that some hidden forces will appear. The recovery of heaven and earth is a supreme opportunity. After these hidden forces are familiar with the current environment, they will definitely come to us and ask for the method to break the seal of heaven and earth. Conflict is inevitable. We must prepare early for this." Yi Haoran looked surprised and said, "In that case, we will have more enemies and more troubles." Yi Tianzong said, "Yes, those hidden forces, except for our Hao Ranjin sect, Lingyun Hall, and Sky Demon Temple. Their true strength should not be inferior to any of the super sections. it is certain that they will come to us to measure our strength. If these forces come to provoke us, we will not be merciful. In this great era of recovery, we must establish the status and dignity of our Hauranjin sect that cannot be challenged. Yi Hauran's face showed a decisive expression and said, "Then let's do it this way. The situation now is different from the past. Our Hauranjin sect is in the teeth of the storm. The style of doing things in the past will also change. With our current strength, and with you, Tianzong, we are not afraid of any provocation." Yi Tianzong said, "In my opinion, let's do it this way. Just in case, the Wuzun realm of our Yi family in the sect's secret realm will be awakened in batches and take turns to guard the sect. Now that the upper limit of heaven and earth has been raised to the Wu King realm, it can barely accommodate the temporary appearance of the Wuzun realm. According to my estimation, after breaking the seal this time, there will be at least 20 years of room for development. Not only do we warriors need time to increase our strength, the profound spirit world also needs to absorb energy from the outside world to slowly accumulate the energy needed for the next expansion of heaven and earth. Now that the seal of heaven and earth has just been broken, our Hauranjin sect is favored by the will of heaven and earth. This is the best time to increase our strength. The most important thing for us now is to raise our strength to the peak of our current realm. Once those Wuzun who came out of the secret realm are familiar with the outside world, we can leave them in charge for the time being. We don't need them to interfere with the daily management of the sect. We just need them to be able to fend off the enemies when they come, giving us time to respond and mobilize the sect's strength. Recently, I will go into seclusion and try to reach the peak of King Wu's martial arts realm in the shortest time possible. Father, grandfather, both of you have cultivated special constitutions. Take these pills. They can help you open the remaining acupoints faster. In the future, we'll still have to rely on us as the main force to deal with everything." After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, he handed 7 bottles of pills to Yi Hauran and the others. The pills in the bottles were spirit culturing pills that Yi Tianzong had specially found in the Immortal Mansion's collection. They could assist in cultivation and were very precious. There were 20 pills in each bottle. Yi Hauran and the others had cultivated special constitutions. In addition, they had participated in breaking the seal of heaven and earth and received feedback from heaven and earth. Not only had they opened 108 acupoints and reached the peak of King Wu's martial arts realm, but their own constitutions had also been strengthened greatly. They had almost reached the peak of medium spiritual level. However, Yi Hauran and the others also knew that it would take a lot of time and resources to open the remaining acupoints. Now that Yi Tianzong had provided them with the spirit culturing pills, Yi Hauran and the others could cultivate to the peak of King Wu's realm and open more acupoints. Seeing Yi Hauran and the others happily accept the pills, Yi Tianzong said a few more words and then returned to his room with Ling Xingyue. They entered the Immortal Mansion and began to cultivate. In the Immortal Mansion, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xingyue each cultivated in a different place. As the two of them cultivated, the yuan qi of heaven and earth in the Immortal Mansion was 4 times denser than the outside world. They quickly absorbed it through their acupoints, forming 2 yuan qi vortexes, one big and one small. Yi Tianzong had opened 1/3 of his 129,600 acupoints with the help of heaven and earth's energy. As for the remaining acupoints, Yi Tianzong had to accumulate his own energy to open them. If this was the outside world, it would take a very long time to complete this arduous process. However, in the Immortal Mansion, the flow of time and the density of yuan qi were 4 times denser than the outside world. In addition, there were all kinds of powerful pills. Yi Tianzong's time to open all his acupoints would be greatly reduced. On the other hand, Ling Xingyue had also benefited greatly in the process of breaking the seal of heaven and earth. Her clear ice spirit body had almost reached the peak of the high-level spiritual level. She had opened 2,000 300 acupoints in her body in one go. As long as her constitution was promoted to the peak of the spiritual level, she would be able to withstand the opening of 3,600 acupoints. After Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinhua had cultivated in seclusion, Yi Haoren and the others had also awakened some of the Wu Zun from the Yi family in the secret land a few days later. After leading these Wu Zun to familiarize themselves with the Hao Ranjin sect, Yi Haoren, Yi Qingxian, and the other Wu Zun who had been awakened previously explained the situation that the Hao Ranjin sect was facing. These Wu Zun who had been awakened readily agreed and allowed them to cultivate in seclusion without worry. They would guard the outside world. Wu Zun had thought this through very clearly. Since they could not cultivate now, they might as well take care of the sect and let the others improve their strength in peace and strengthen the sect. When the sect's strength increased and the seal was broken again, they would be able to make up for the damaged foundation and foundation. Then they would be able to improve again. It was better to stay outside than to sleep in the secret land. Therefore, the entire Hao Ranjin sect quieted down and focused on improving their strength in peace. However, things in the world never went as one wished. Just as Yi Tianzong and the higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect were cultivating in seclusion, the hidden forces that had emerged due to the changes in heaven and earth finally couldn't help but start to stir up trouble after familiarizing themselves with the current situation. They began to clash and fight with the original forces in the Central Plains. The forces that emerged at this time were basically at the level of super sects, according to the previous standards. These super forces that emerged took advantage of the fact that the seal of heaven and earth had been broken, and the various super forces and the Zhou dynasty were too busy to fend for themselves. They quickly swallowed up the territories of the former third-rate, second-rate, and even first-rate sects and grew rapidly. After occupying a large enough territory, these super forces lurked and digested their gains. 3 years later, these super forces that had temporarily stopped stirred up trouble again. After digesting the territories that they had previously occupied, these forces were unwilling to be left out and began to clash with the original super sects in the Central Plains. When these super forces in the present world clashed with the original super sects, the Hao Ranjin sect, as the initiator of the new era, became the main target of these hidden forces that emerged. The Hao Ranjin sect had the method to break the seal of heaven and earth, and other super forces had obtained the method from the Hao Ranjin sect through trade. This news was widely known, but these super forces that emerged all had their eyes on the Hao Ranjin sect. They sent various numbers of experts, such as King Wu and Marquis Wu, to the Hao Ranjin sect. They didn't hide their aggressive attitude at all, and it was obvious that they had ulterior motives. The Tiangang building, the intelligence agency of the Hao Ranjin sect, also received the news and sent it back to the sect. After coming out of seclusion, the higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect saw the news and knew that trouble had finally come. Chapter 82. According to the information obtained by Tiangang Pavilion, at least 7 superpowers had come to Hao Ranjin sect. Their purpose was unknown, but they did not seem to have good intentions. In the Harren Hall, all the higher-ups of Hao Ranjin sect were present, except for Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinhua, who were still in seclusion. Looking at the news they received, everyone in the hall was displeased. As the lord of the disciplinary hall, Yi Haoyun was the first to speak. Everyone, these hidden powers have been restless for the past few years. This time, they have set their sights on us. This time, they want to use our Hao Ranjin sect to establish their power. Lin Qin, the lord of the testing hall, said, "Humph, they want to use us to establish their power? They are not afraid of breaking their teeth. These powers dare to provoke us. We must not let them go back alive." Xiao Chonglin, the lord of the 100 Herbs Hall, said, "That's right. We worked hard to break the seal of heaven and earth. These powers not only do not know how to be grateful, but also want to use us as a stepping stone. We must not tolerate them." seeing the various hall lords and the elders with real power below speak one after another. Their attitude towards the unfriendly superpowers was firm, and they had no intention of backing down. Yi Haoren, Yi Qingxian, and the others looked at each other and nodded slightly in satisfaction. When facing an external enemy, it was taboo to have differing opinions. When facing an external enemy, it was very likely that unpredictable situations would occur. Regardless of the strength of the enemy, whether they were strong or weak, they were still enemies. As long as they were enemies, there was no room for compromise. Since Haoranzhen's sect had become the leader of this era, there was no room for retreat. When facing the suppression and obstruction of any power, they could only break through and crush them. After confirming their attitude towards the external enemy, the higher-ups of Haoranzhen's sect did not continue their seclusion. Instead, they made some targeted arrangements and waited for the arrival of the various powers. Because they were all masters of the Marquis Wu realm and King Wu realm, these powers came quickly. In less than a month, a total of 8 powers, more than 200 King Wu realm masters, and more than 600 Marquis Wu realm masters came to Haoranzhen's sect's territory. These people did not delay on the way and went straight to Haoranzhen's sect's Tiangang Peak. When a warrior cultivated to the Wu King realm, he could fly for a long time. Realm masters of the Marquis Wu realm could also fly for a short period of time. Although the city of Haoran City was more than 500 feet high after the 2 heavens and earth, the city walls of the Marquis and King realm masters of the Marquis and King realm masters. They flew over Haoran City easily. Without any intention of saying hello, these masters went straight to Tiangang Peak. However, they underestimated the vigilance of Haoranzhen's sect. When they began to fly over Haoran City, they were discovered by Haoranzhen's sect. After the heavens and earth recovered, the pneuma increased greatly. Not only human beings, but even animals also developed spiritual intelligence and became monsters. Haoranzhen's sect had already domesticated many goshawks as helpers. They were responsible for patrolling the sky. King Wu realm masters and Marquis Wu realm masters of various powers were discovered by the goshawks flying high in the sky when they just flew over Haoran City. Haoranzhen's sect had spent a lot of money on these goshawks. They had never stopped using all kinds of elixirs to strengthen their physique and strength. And these goshawks had developed spiritual intelligence early on. They were very smart. Even if they fought alone on land, they could match a warrior of Wu Ling realm. When they saw many people flying directly over Haoran City, they knew that they were enemies. So they informed the people of Haoranzhen's sect through their screeches. As soon as the people of Haoranzhen's sect heard the special screeches of the goshawks, they knew that there were enemies coming from the sky, and there were many of them. Therefore, all the sober people of Haoranzhen's sect, including King Wu and Marquis Wu, rose into the sky and flew directly in the direction indicated by the goshawks. They must not let the enemies get close to Tiangang Peak. Otherwise, if they fought, the disciples on Tiangang Peak would be affected. The screeches of the goshawks were not only heard by the people of Haoranzhen's sect, but also by the people of the 8 powers. Naturally, they knew that they had been discovered. However, they were more powerful than Haoranzhen's sect, so they were not afraid. They did not think it was a big deal to be discovered. Although the 8 powers were not very familiar with each other, their common target was Haoranzhen's sect. If they cooperated, both sides would benefit. They were temporarily on the same side when facing Haoranzhen's sect. Since they had been discovered, the people of the 8 powers did not stop moving forward. They continued to fly forward. Soon, more than 100 King Wu realm masters and more than 300 Marquis Wu realm masters of Haoranzhen's sect saw the enemies coming. When they saw that these people were still flying toward Tiangang Peak after being discovered, they were furious. Then they flew directly in front of the enemies and blocked their way. Yi Haoren stood in front of the group of people from the Haoran Orthodox sect. Facing the people from the 8 major forces, he asked bluntly Who are you people? Why did you barge into the airspace of my Haran Orthodox sect without saying a word? The people of the 8 powers looked at the more than 100 King Wu realm masters and more than 300 Marquis Wu realm masters of Hao Ranjin sect in shock. Although the strength of the Hao Ranjin sect was much lower than theirs, the strength of Hao Ranjin sect was obviously beyond their expectations. In order to achieve their goals, each of the 8 powers had sent nearly half of their forces here. Individually, the strength of Hao Ranjin sect had already surpassed the strength of any of the 8 powers. After exchanging glances with each other, the 8 powers were even more determined to suppress Hao Ranjin sect. One of the powers flew to the front and said, "We are from the 7 Invincible sect. We have a heritage from the ancient times. We heard that Hao Ranjin sect has the secret of reviving heaven and earth. We're here to ask you to hand over the secret. From now on, without our permission, you are not allowed to break the seal of heaven and earth." Yes, we, the Xianin sect, have the same idea. Hand over the secret of reviving heaven and earth and become an affiliated sect of the Xianin sect. Otherwise, you will have to bear our anger. Another power flew up and said in an arrogant tone, "We, the Tiani sect, are here to. We, the Gulyo Mountain, are here to. We, the Blood God Palace, will." A total of 8 new superpowers demanded Hao Ranjin sect to hand over the method of breaking the seal of heaven and earth. They also threatened to destroy Hao Ranjin sect if they did not obey their orders. The unreasonable demands and threats made the people of Hao Ranjin sect furious. Yi Haoran, who was furious, did not have the patience to continue talking. He directly said, "Beat them up. We must kill these bastards." After that, he took the lead and attacked the people of the 8 powers. Since the rise of Hao Ranjin sect, they had never been threatened like this. Even the superpowers and the Zhou dynasty in the past were not satisfied with Hao Ranjin sect. They even regarded Hao Ranjin sect as their enemy. They actually wanted Hao Ranjin sect to submit to them. How could they be so awesome? Now, the tough and arrogant attitude of the 8 powers had completely annoyed all the people of Hao Ranjin sect. The people of the 8 powers were stunned when they saw Hao Ranjin sect suddenly take the initiative to attack. But they soon reacted and attacked the people of Hao Ranjin sect. There were more than 300 King Wu and 800 Marquis Wu fighting in the sky. The range of the battle between Marquis Wu and King Wu far exceeded Wuzong. The sky within a radius of hundreds of miles became their battlefield. The number of martial kings and martial marquises from the 8 great powers was equivalent to twice the number of people from the righteous faction. Furthermore, their legacies had been passed down for a very long time. Every single one of them was able to display their peak strength. There was no sign of their strength decreasing due to their deep sleep. However, King Wu and Marquis Wu from Hao Ranjin sect had practiced the Haoran True Tiangang formula, created by Yi Tianzong. They were not afraid of anyone at the same level as them. Even when facing twice the number of enemies, they were not at a disadvantage. The people of Hao Ranjin sect and the 8 powers were fighting fiercely in the sky within a radius of hundreds of miles. King Wu and the experts of Hao Ranjin sect were fighting fiercely in the sky. They flew freely in the vast and unobstructed sky. Surging Jinyuan and moves collided with each other. Sword radiance, saber radiance, fist shadows, palm prints, and so on were all over the sky. The power was overflowing, and the sound of the air exploding resounded through the sky. Below, Marquis Wu fought fiercely from the sky to the ground, and from the ground to the sky. Chapter 83. The more they fought with the Hao Ranjin sect, the more frightened the 8 forces became. How could the people of the Hao Ranjin sect be so strong? They were not at a disadvantage even when they were fighting 2 people at the same time. What kind of sword technique was that? How could it be so powerful? This was especially true for Yi Haoran, Yi Tianzong, and the other members of Yi Tianzong's family. The 7 of them cultivated the divine, martial, heavenly skill, and all of them had cultivated special constitutions. In addition, thanks to the spirit-culturing pills given by Yi Tianzong, all of them had reached the peak of the Qingwu realm. They had opened up 1,681 acupoints in their bodies. In terms of actual combat power, they had long surpassed the ordinary peak of the Qingwu realm. Yi Haoren and the other 6 displayed all their skills on the battlefield of the Qingwu realm. No one was a match for them, and the 8 forces suffered a great loss from the beginning. Because they were not clear about the strength of Yi Haoren and the other 6, the 8 forces only fought with the people of the Hao Ranjin sect in a 2-on-1 mode. In the end, they encountered the 7 people of the Hao Ranjin sect, including Yi Haoren and Yi Yuanshan, who were going all out and wanted to end the battle quickly. Therefore, in just a few rounds, Yi Haoren and the other 6 crushed the 14 Qingwu realm cultivators who were fighting with them. This gave the 8 forces a big fright. How could they be so strong? Shocked, they quickly freed up some people to surround Yi Haoren and the other 6. They could not let them get away, or else they would be in big trouble. Under the special care of the 8 forces, each of Yi Haoren and the other 6 was surrounded by about 10 Qingwu realm cultivators. They wanted to surround and kill them. However, in the face of the 10 martial kings, Yi Haoren and the others did not attempt to defend themselves. Instead, they took the initiative to attack. Each of them wielded a powerful divine weapon and displayed the overwhelming Heavenly Dipper sword technique. Sharp, overbearing, and overwhelming sword beams accompanied Yi Haoren and the others as they continuously attacked the cultivators from the 8 great forces from all directions. In the face of the continuous sword light attacks from Yi Haoren and the others, the 8 forces could only try their best to resist. They kept cursing Yi Haoren and the others in their hearts. Why were they so strong that even with so many people, they could not suppress them? The sharp and domineering sword light made it clear to the 8 forces King Wu realm cultivators that if they were not careful, they would be seriously injured or even killed. However, even if they tried their best to resist, they still suffered serious injuries. Yi Haoren and the other 6 had the upper hand. The more they fought, the braver they became. They beat the 8 forces' opponents until they were forced to retreat, and their injuries were worsening. This was not the end. After a fierce fight with the 8 forces King Wu realm cultivators, Yi Haoren and the others had a rough idea of their own strength. They also vented their desire to fight. Then they used a unique skill, the Qian Kuan force field. The universe force field was a consummate skill recorded in the divine martial heavenly skill to assist in killing enemies. It could create a special force field within a certain range. Once inside the universe force field, as long as the opponent's strength was lower than the user's, then the enemy's body and Jinyuan would be suppressed and unable to move. It would be like an ordinary person being tied up by a rope with almost no power to fight back. The Qian Kuan force field was very difficult to practice. Yi Haoren and the others had only slowly figured out some of its mysteries after they had cultivated a special body constitution. Finally, they had cultivated their own Qian Kuan force field. Although it was a far cry from the one Yi Tianzong force field used, it was still very effective in restricting the enemy's movements. As Yi Haoren and the others displayed the Qian Kuan force field, all of the 8 forces King Wu realm cultivators who were fighting against them suddenly felt as if they were entangled by something. Their speed slowed down by nearly 30%. This was a great discovery, and it scared them out of their wits. This was a battle. It was already very difficult for them to fight against their opponents, and now they themselves were in trouble. Wasn't this a death sentence? The reality confirmed their worries. Seeing that the 8 forces' movements had slowed down, Yi Haoren and the others knew that the Qian Kuan force field was working. So they seized the opportunity and directly used the group attack sword skill, the sword sweeping demons, which consumed a lot of vital essence. Yi Haoren and the others' momentum sword. The vital essence in their bodies was crazily mobilized in a special way. Then their bodies spun rapidly in the air. A full moon attack formed by endless sword chi spread out in all directions with Yi Haoran and the others as the center. The 8 forces members, who could not move freely, were drowned by the countless sword chi. In the end, the attack dissipated, and the 70 King Wu realm cultivators who were fighting against Yi Haoran and the others were also killed. The sudden burst of power from Yi Haoran and the others naturally attracted a lot of attention. But after seeing the final result, the 8 forces members were stunned and terrified. On the other hand, the Hao Ran Zhen sect's members were happy and excited. The more they fought, the more courageous they became. They even began to gain the upper hand. After eliminating the enemies, Yi Haoran and the others did not delay. The 7 of them chose 7 directions on the battlefield: front, back, left, right, top, middle, and bottom. They began to hunt down the King Wu realm cultivators of the 8 forces. Relying on the Aurora Flash Shadow movement technique, Yi Haoran and the rest of the 7 quickly traversed the battlefield, wandering around like ghosts. When the 8 forces members were fighting against the Hao Ran Jin sect's King Wu realm cultivators, Lingxi Finger, Sword Radiance, Palm Prints, and Fist Prints appeared behind them and attacked the 8 forces members. Caught off guard, the 8 forces members were not only seriously injured, but also killed by the successive attacks. King Wu realm cultivators of 8 forces wanted to break away from the battle and retreat when they saw the situation was not good. However, King Wu realm cultivators of the Hao Ran Zhen sect did not agree. They crazily operated the Jinqi in their bodies and used all their strength to entangle the 8 forces members. They could not let them escape and bought time for Yi Haoran and the others. Even if King Wu realm cultivators of the 8 forces wanted to break away from the battle and retreat, Yi Haoran and the others caught up and killed them in the end. With the cooperation of King Wu realm cultivators, Yi Haoran and the others quickly killed dozens of King Wu realm cultivators of the 8 forces. The Hao Ran Zhen sect had the advantage in terms of the number of King Wu realm cultivators on both sides. There were not enough King Wu realm cultivators for each of them. Seeing this, Yi Haoran and the others stopped their plans to continue fighting. They ignored the pleas of the 8 forces members and let King Wu realm cultivators deal with their opponents alone. Yi Yuanshan, Yi Haoran, and Yi Haoyin stayed in the air to prevent the enemies from escaping. Li Qingya, Li Qingshi, Su Mingxin, and Zi Yunxian led the extra King Wu realm cultivators to continue to participate in the Battle of Marquis Wu realm cultivators below. The Battle of Marquis Wu realm cultivators below was fierce, because the Marquis Wu realm cultivators could only fly for a short time. The battle was from the sky to the ground, and then from the ground to the sky. Everywhere they passed, sand and dust flew, and trees and stones cracked. The battle was very fierce. However, many of the Marquis Wu realm cultivators of the Hao Ran Jin sect were new Marquis Wu realm cultivators at the early or middle stage. Few of the 8 forces were at the middle stage of Marquis Wu realm cultivators. Most of them were at the late stage and peak stage of Marquis Wu realm cultivators. Although the Marquis Wu of the Hao Ran Jin sect was more powerful at the same level, the suppression of realms was still very obvious. Moreover, it was 2 against 1. Therefore, on the battlefield, the Marquis Wu realm cultivators of the Hao Ran Jin sect were at a disadvantage as a whole. Many Marquis Wu realm cultivators had been seriously injured, but they were still fighting hard. The situation was very dangerous. The arrival of Li Qingya and a dozen other King Wu realm cultivators could be said to have solved the urgent situation and turned the dangerous situation around. As soon as Li Qingya and a dozen other King Wu realm cultivators joined the battle, they first replaced the seriously injured Marquis Wu realm cultivators and asked them to withdraw from the battle and go back to Tiangang Peak to heal. Then they started to sweep the Marquis Wu realm cultivators of the 8 forces. The gap between King Wu realm cultivators and Marquis Wu realm cultivators was very big. Moreover, for various reasons, King Wu realm cultivators of the Haoranjin sect were much more powerful than ordinary King Wu realm cultivators of the same level. Against Marquis Wu realm cultivators of lower realms, he could directly sweep them away. It was no problem for him to fight against 10 Marquis Wu realm cultivators. As long as they saw him, they could not escape. With the addition of a dozen King Wu realm cultivators, the 8 forces of the Marquis Wu realm cultivators were doomed to be completely wiped out, even though they had a large number of people. The battle lasted for more than 2 hours from the beginning to the end. The Haoranjin sect completely wiped out the enemies. The 8 forces were completely wiped out and no one escaped. In the end, Yiharan realm cultivators only left 8 people alive, 1 for each force. They destroyed their martial cultivation and broke their limbs. Finally, they were locked up in the dungeon of the Haoranjin sect. Because Yiharan realm cultivators did not know the soul-sucking secret skill, they could only wait until Yi Tianzong came out of his closed-door training to get some useful information from these people. After the battle, the Haoranjin sect returned to its peaceful state. They continued to cultivate while waiting for the next storm to come. This time, the seal of heaven and earth was broken. There were definitely more than 8 hidden forces coming out. This was just the first wave of tests. Although the enemies were completely wiped out and some forces with ulterior motives were deterred, those forces would never stop coveting and suppressing the Haoranjin sect. This was just the beginning. Chapter 84. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. In these 10 years, the entire profound spirit world was in a state of turmoil. In the central plains, the western regions, the southern wasteland, and the northern regions, hidden superpowers from the ancient era and the ancient era appeared one after another. After these powers appeared, in order to obtain more land and space for development, they clashed, fought, and annexed the original countries, dynasties, superpowers, and first-rate, second-rate, and third-rate sects that originally existed in the 4 regions. Every day, there would be different levels of powers expanding their territories. Every day, there would be first-rate powers and below that would be annihilated and annexed by the new superpowers. Every day, there would be new superpowers and old superpowers fighting and clashing. Every day, there would be countless killings. In these 10 years, the entire profound spirit world was in turmoil. In the central plains, in these 10 years, there were over 80 superpowers that were known to have appeared. These 80 superpowers had a huge impact on the original structure of the central plains. Because the seal of heaven and earth had been broken twice, the profound spirit world had expanded twice. The central plains had expanded to over 300,000 li in all directions. The original Medicine King Valley, Lingyun Hall, and the other superpowers had expanded their territories to over 10,000 li. Because the territories were too vast, the Zhou dynasty could not even take care of them. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the various superpowers naturally expanded their territories. For example, Lingyun Hall, Sky Demon Temple, and the other superpowers had already expanded their territories to over 20,000 li. Even the Haoranjin sect had taken advantage of this opportunity to expand their territories to over 20,000 li. As for the 80 superpowers that had appeared, they would naturally seek their own territories. As a result, the superpowers that did not have enough space to expand began to clash with the Zhou dynasty, the old Lingyun Hall, Sky Demon Temple, and the other superpowers. There were many battles between the old and the new forces, and in the end, there were winners and losers. The Sky Demon Temple and Lingyun Hall had existed since ancient times. As expected of the overlords of the original superpowers, they weren't afraid in the slightest when faced with a challenge from a new superpower. They displayed their powerful strength and foundation, not allowing the challenger to gain the slightest advantage. In fact, they even taught them a lesson. Meanwhile, the Kunlun sect, which had originally kept a low profile, shone brightly in the face of a new superpowers challenge. Its performance was in no way inferior to the Sky Demon Temple and Lingyun Halls. attracting the attention of the various powers. The Medicine King Valley Guegong sect and Diana Buddhist temple had sacrificed many of their disciples, but they had also displayed their great strength, firmly protecting the territory within a radius of 15,000 li. The remaining 100 Poison sect, Dry Bone Mountain, Valmen Valley, and Four Elephants sect had shown some weakness, as the new superpowers had forcefully taken over many of their territories, leaving them with only a radius of 10,000 li. The one that had suffered the greatest loss was the Zhou dynasty, as the new superpowers had forcefully taken over many of their territories. Due to the expansion of the world, the Zhou dynasty's territory had expanded to a radius of 25,000 li. More than half of the new superpowers were within the Zhou dynasty's territory. As for the new superpowers, they did not care if the Zhou dynasty was originally the overlord of the Central Plains. After accumulating their strength, they immediately began to expand without restraint. As most of the Zhou dynasty's forces were stationed at the border, their internal strength was insufficient. In such a vast territory, the Zhou dynasty could not take care of it in a short period of time. As for the new superpowers that were causing trouble and expanding their territories without restraint, the Zhou dynasty was powerless. In such a dire situation, the Zhou dynasty had no choice but to seek help from the ancient Western Kingdom, the Hu Kingdom of the northern frontier, and the Lin Kingdom of the southern wastelands. As for the ancient Western Kingdom, the Hu Kingdom of the northern frontier, and the Lin Kingdom of the southern wastelands, these three kingdoms were also extremely vexed by the new superpowers in their territories. They had long since planned to withdraw their forces from the border. When the Zhou dynasty came looking for them, both sides hit it off and came to an agreement. Both sides withdrew their forces from the border, leaving behind only 3 million troops for defense. The great Zhou dynasty, which had withdrawn most of its forces, was ruthless towards the new super forces that were stirring up trouble within its territory, as well as the first, second, and third-rate sects that were taking advantage of the situation to take advantage of it. They sent out a huge army to suppress them and used all sorts of powerful weapons. The government and the sects fought fiercely, and in 10 years, countless people were injured or killed. The dynasty and the sects were natural enemies. When the Zhou dynasty was fighting with the new superpowers in their territories, the other superpowers were also taking advantage of the situation. Although the Zhou dynasty's strength was tyrannical, it couldn't withstand the attacks of so many superpowers. In the end, due to the huge losses and pressure, the Zhou dynasty's territory was reduced to a radius of 200,000 li. The emperor of the Zhou dynasty was so angry that he flew into a rage. As for the Demon Sword sect, the Shura sect, and the Jinbu Gate, they were more unlucky. They were already badly beaten by the Hao Ranjin sect, and in the end, no less than 7 superpowers appeared around these 3 sections. If it weren't for the support of the sects, the main target of those superpowers was the Hao Ranjin sect. They would have been completely defeated long ago. Now, they could only maintain a radius of 5,000 li. 10 years ago, the righteous faction was first provoked by the 8 great superpowers. However, after the righteous faction was annihilated, the righteous faction had been in a state of war for the past 10 years. As the only superpower to break the seal of heaven and earth, the Hao Ranjin sect naturally attracted the interest of many superpowers. Apart from a few superpowers who were kind to the Hao Ranjin sect, the majority of the superpowers were hostile to the Hao Ranjin sect. As for the method to break the seal of heaven and earth, the Hao Ranjin sect naturally knew that they couldn't keep it. However, it was also impossible for them to hand it over so easily. Therefore, 8 years ago, the Hao Ranjin sect joined forces with 18 superpowers that had exchanged resources for the method, including the Zhou dynasty. They formed a temporary alliance and negotiated with the new superpowers, allowing them to exchange resources such as spiritual herbs and spiritual medicines. According to the Hao Ranjin sect, they had already earned a large amount of resources by trading with them. It didn't matter whether they handed over the method to break the seal of heaven and earth or not. If they saw that other superpowers had obtained the method for free and didn't feel unbalanced, then they wouldn't care. On the other hand, if they stood on the same side as the Haurangian sect, they could split the resources equally. In the end, the Zhou dynasty and the other superpowers considered the gains and losses. Although they were unhappy, they could only stand on the same side as the Haurangian sect. After forming a temporary alliance, the Haurangian sect negotiated with the various superpowers. In the end, the Zhou dynasty, Lingyunhal, and the other superpowers received a very generous amount of resources. They didn't know whether to be happy or sad. They couldn't stay calm either. It was a very complicated feeling. Although the Haurangian sect had already traded away the method to break the seal of heaven and earth, the other superpowers had never stopped suppressing and targeting the Haurangian sect. Since the Haurangian sect could break the seal of heaven and earth twice in a row, there was no guarantee that the Haurangian sect wouldn't be in front of all the other superpowers again. This was especially true for the superpowers that were close to the Haurangian sect. They definitely wouldn't allow the Haurangian sect to break the seal of heaven and earth again and increase their strength greatly. Therefore, in the past 10 years, the 7 superpowers that had appeared around the Demon Sword sect, Shura sect, and Jinbu Gate had been constantly attacking the Haurangian sect's territory. They wanted to deplete the strength of the Haurangian sect. Among the 7 superpowers, there were no Overlord superpowers like Lingyunhal or the Sky Demon Temple. However, according to the investigation conducted by the Haurangian sect, their strength was comparable to superpowers like the Guewang sect and the Medicine King Valley. These 7 superpowers formed an alliance to deal with the Haurangian sect. They gathered more than 5 million people and attacked the Haurangian sect's territory from all directions. Chapter 85. Compared to the alliance of the 7 superpowers, although the righteous faction had fewer people overall, they had more experts above the martial spirit realm than the 7 superpowers combined. After breaking the second seal, the Haurangian sect had over 50,000 Wu Zongjing members. On the other hand, the 7 superpowers combined had less than 20,000 Wu Zongjing members. Compared to Haurangian sect, the Haurangian sect had far fewer members. The Haurangian sect did not face much pressure when dealing with the 7 superpowers alliance. However, to show weakness and prevent the other superpowers from focusing on them so soon, the Haurangian sect only dispatched 1,200,000 disciples, 20,000 Wu Zongjing members, and half of its upper echelons to deal with the 7 superpowers alliance's attack. During the battle between the Haurangian sect and the 7 superpowers alliance, the Haurangian sect adopted a defensive strategy, slowly whittling away at the alliance's strength. This situation continued for 3 years. During these 3 years, the Haurangian sect had annihilated over 2 million members of the 7 superpowers alliance. It had also killed over 200 Marquis Wu Realm and Wu King Realm experts. Moreover, due to the Haurangian sect's deliberate actions, the members of the 7 superpowers alliance believed that the Haurangian sect had also suffered a large number of casualties. In reality, without anyone noticing, the Haurangian sect had gained an absolute advantage in the war. It could easily cripple the 7 superpowers alliance in one fell swoop. However, Yi Haoran and the other upper echelons had underestimated the attention and fear the other superpowers had of the Haurangian sect. Just as the Haurangian sect was about to cripple the 7 superpowers alliance in one fell swoop, an unforeseen event occurred. The other superpowers began to join the fray, forcing the Haurangian sect to dispatch all of its forces. The 1,800,000 Haoran disciples and 700,000 members of the Haoran courtyard were dispatched to deal with the enemy. At the same time, all of the Haurangian sect's elders, deacons, and grand elders stopped their closed-door cultivation. Instead, they were constantly on guard against the enemy's attacks. The unforeseen event came from the distant superpowers that were hostile to the Haurangian sect. Although they were too far away to send a large force to deal with the Haurangian sect, these hostile superpowers had already reached a tacit agreement with the 7 superpowers alliance. Just as the Seven Superpowers Alliance was about to be crippled by the Hao Ranjin sect, the other superpowers joined the fray. This was especially true for the Seven Invincible sect, First Heaven sect, Blood God Palace, and other superpowers that were the first to provoke the Hao Ranjin sect 3 years ago. These 8 superpowers' strength were considered among the upper echelons of superpowers. 3 years ago, they each sent nearly half of their upper echelons to attack the Hao Ranjin sect. In the end, all of them were annihilated. Unaware of the situation, the 8 superpowers did not continue to act rashly. Instead, they lay low and quickly recovered their strength. After 3 years, they had recovered some of their strength, and the territory they occupied was basically stable, unwilling to lose their strength for no reason. The 8 superpowers sent out several dozen Marquis Wu and King Wu to join the 7 Superpowers Alliance. They wanted to use the 7 Superpowers Alliance to deal with the Hao Ranjin sect. The other superpowers sent out varying numbers of Wu Zong, Marquis Wu, and King Wu to join the 7 Superpowers Alliance. They wanted to use the 7 Superpowers Alliance to weaken the Hao Ranjin sect. In turn, the 7 Superpowers Alliance also wanted to use the other superpowers' strength to suppress and take revenge on the Hao Ranjin sect, especially with the addition of upper echelons like Marquis Wu and King Wu. The 7 Superpowers Alliance's upper echelons gained the upper hand. Even though Yi Haoran and the others were stronger than the average King Wu, if 10 of them couldn't defeat them, they would send out 20. If 20 still weren't enough, they would send out 30. There were many superpowers that were hostile to the Hao Ranjin sect. Even if each superpower only sent out less than 100 people, Wu Zong, Marquis Wu, and King Wu, they were still a very powerful force. If they weren't strong enough, they could make up for it with numbers. If several dozen King Wu surrounded one person, no matter how strong Yi Haoran and the others were, they could only defend themselves. It was the same for Marquis Wu's battlefield. Both sides were outnumbered. Sometimes, when the situation was critical, Wu Zun, who was in charge of the Hao Ranjin sect, had no choice but to save the day. It was also because of the existence of Wu Zun, who was in charge of the Hao Ranjin sect, that the 7 Superpowers Alliance had scruples and didn't want to push them too far. Although the 7 superpowers also had Wu Zun, they were the foundation of the 7 superpowers. However, compared to the Hao Ranjin sect's Wu Zun, who cultivated Haoran's true heavenly dipper technique, Wu Zun of the 7 superpowers was much weaker because he was in deep slumber. In addition, once Wu Zun made a move, his aura would be locked down by the will of heaven and earth, and there would be a time limit for him to stay in the outside world. Yi Tianzong had already considered such a situation before he went into seclusion. Therefore, he prepared dozens of array talismans that were engraved with disorienting, illusory arrays. These array talismans with disorienting, illusory arrays were made by Yi Tianzong in his previous life when he was in the myth realm. They were very effective. As long as one wore the array talisman with disorienting, illusory arrays, Wu Zun's aura would be concealed when he made a move. Thus, he wouldn't be locked down by the will of heaven and earth, and he would continue to appear in the outside world without a time limit. Wu Zun of the 7 Superpowers Alliance didn't have a cheat like the array talisman with disorienting, illusory arrays. Therefore, although they had more Wu Zun, they couldn't attack at any time like Wu Zun of the Hao Ranjin sect. However, although Wu Zun of the Hao Ranjin sect could attack at any time, he couldn't casually interfere in the battle between King Wu and Marquis Wu unless the lives of the Hao Ranjin sect's important higher-ups were in danger. This was because, apart from the 7 superpowers, the other superpowers didn't send Wu Zun's experts. The main reason was that there were various restrictions on the appearance of Wu Zun's experts. If they didn't return to the secret land in time, they would be killed by the heavenly thunder. However, if Wu Zun of the Hao Ranjin sect casually killed King Wu and Marquis Wu, then the other superpowers would ruthlessly sacrifice one Wu Zun's expert each. Without Yi Tianzong, the Hao Ranjin sect wouldn't be able to resist. Therefore, the two sides reached a tacit understanding. Wu Zun of the Hao Ranjin sect couldn't casually attack King Wu and Marquis Wu, but the other superpowers couldn't force the Hao Ranjin sect too much either. There could be casualties, but the casualties couldn't be too high. Under such circumstances, although the Hao Ranjin sect's experts at and above the Marquis Wu's realm were at a disadvantage, they didn't suffer too many casualties. In the past 7 years, more than 100 Marquis Wu and King Wu had fallen. Fortunately, there were also new Marquis Wu and King Wu. This kind of loss was still within the acceptable range of the Hao Ranjin sect. However, in the battle between Marquis Wu and below, the Hao Ranjin sect lost hundreds of thousands of people. At this time, in one of the main battle sites between the Hao Ranjin sect and the Seven Superpowers Alliance, Xianyun City, Yi Haoran and some of the higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect gathered in the mayor's mansion. The atmosphere was quite depressing. The battle between the Hao Ranjin sect and the Seven Superpowers Alliance had two directions. The main locations were Xianyun City, which was south of Tiangang Peak, and Jinluo City, which was east of Tiangang Peak. Yi Haoran, Su Mingxin, Yi Haoyun, and Zi Yunxian led some of the higher-ups to guard Xianyun City, where the enemy's strength was relatively strong. Yi Yuanshan, Li Qingya, and Li Qingshi led another group of people to guard Jinluo City. Both sides were followed by Wu Zun of the Hao Ranjin sect. In the mayor's mansion of Xianyun City, Yi Haoran recalled the battle 2 days ago. With a heavy expression, he said to the higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect, "In the recent battles, the enemies King Wu and Marquis Wu are increasing in number. Their attacks are getting fiercer and fiercer. I'm afraid they can't hold back anymore. We have to prepare for the worst." As soon as he said this, the Achievement Hall Master, Wan Li, said with an ugly expression, "Sect Master, are you saying that the enemy is going to launch an all-out attack and won't hold back anymore? Aren't they afraid of our Hao Ranjin sect's Wu Zun?" Yi Haoran said in a heavy tone, "You've all sensed it. The enemy has clearly grown impatient. Let's hope my guess is wrong. Perhaps the enemy has already made up their mind. After all, it's only sacrificing a martial saint. It's not a big deal to a superpower." Yi Haoran's words clearly poked at what everyone was worried about the most. However, no one had any good ideas in the face of this situation. The Hao Ranjin sect had already used all their strength. It was too late to go back to Tiangang Peak and ask for Wu Zun's help, then kill as many as come. It's just Wu Zun. As long as I'm here, they won't be able to return. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded in the room. Hearing this voice, everyone was overjoyed. Yi Haoran said happily, "Tianzong, you've finally come out." Chapter 86. As soon as Yi Haoran finished speaking, an indistinct figure in green appeared out of thin air in the hall. It was Yi Tianzong, who had rushed over after coming out of seclusion. Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue had been in seclusion for 10 years. Because they had cultivated to the Wu King realm, they were completely free of their dependence on food and did not need to eat to maintain the energy their bodies needed. Therefore, Yi Tianzong did not come out of seclusion, and Yi Haoran and the other higher-ups of the Hao Ranjin sect did not disturb Yi Tianzong. 10 years in the outside world was equivalent to 40 years in the immortal mansion. In addition, the heaven-earth yuan qi was 4 times denser than the outside world, as well as a large number of various spirit pills. Yi Tianzong had finally opened all 129,600 acupuncture points in his body and truly cultivated to the peak of the Wu King realm. After opening all of his acupuncture points and reaching the peak of the Wu King realm, Yi Tianzong's strength had increased by an unknown amount. These ordinary Wu Zun in the profound spirit world were simply no match for him. It was only now that Yi Tianzong's prodigy level foundation had begun to reveal the tip of the iceberg, and there was an obvious huge gap between him and ordinary martial artists. Ling Xinyue, who was with Yi Tianzong, had also been reborn in the 40 years in the immortal mansion and her realm had soared. Originally, she was only at the high level of the spirit level, but with the countless resources provided by Yi Tianzong, she had been promoted to the peak of the profound level, the clear ice Xian body. Moreover, she had opened all 7,200 acupuncture points in her body, and her strength was also tyrannical. Fighting against Wu Zun was a piece of cake. After coming out of seclusion, Yi Tianzong inquired about the current situation from the several elders guarding Tiangang Peak. Without further delay, he split up with Ling Xinyue and rushed to the location of the battle. Yi Tianzong rushed to Xianyun City, while Ling Xinyue went to support Zhenluo City. After Yi Tianzong reached the peak of the Wu King realm, he was able to use some methods of Wu Shang's realm in advance. With the help of the profound space law, Yi Tianzong arrived at Xianyun City in less than a day. Yi Tianzong's arrival gave the people in the Haoranzhen sect great confidence. Glancing at everyone in the hall, there were familiar faces as well as unfamiliar faces. In the end, he looked at Yi Haoran and said, "Father, I already know the general situation. Please tell me the details. I came in a hurry and don't know the current situation." Yi Tianzong's arrival made everyone, including Yi Haoran, breathe a sigh of relief. He didn't regard Yi Tianzong as an outsider and directly summarized the difficult situation facing the Haoranzhen sect to Yi Tianzong. After Yi Haoran finished speaking, Yi Tianzong felt everyone's expectant eyes. He said directly, "Don't worry, everyone. Since I've come out of seclusion, it means that I have the strength to be fearless. Wu Zun is just an ant in my eyes. When the enemy comes again, it will be the day of their destruction. I won't let any enemy go. Humph." After that, Yi Tianzong's body suddenly erupted with an invincible aura that suppressed the world and filled the space within a radius of dozens of miles. Not only did it shock everyone in the hall, even Wu Zun of the Haoranzhen sect, who was hiding at the side, was greatly shocked. Even the disciples of the Haoranzhen sect within a radius of dozens of miles suddenly felt a sense of Mount Tai pressing down on them, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. However, some of the older Haoran disciples suddenly relaxed after being on guard. Then they laughed and shouted excitedly, "That's the feeling. The young sect master has come out of seclusion. The young sect master has come to Xianyun City." Then the news quickly spread throughout Xianyun City. Perhaps Yi Tianzong himself didn't notice that unknowingly, Yi Tianzong already had the supreme and irreplaceable prestige and status in the hearts of all the people of the Haoranzhen sect. Yi Tianzong was the supreme spiritual leader and faith of the Haoranzhen sect. He represented the invincible power of the Haoranzhen sect. As long as Yi Tianzong was there, the people of the Haoranzhen sect were fearless and confident in facing all strong enemies. Previously, Yi Tianzong had not come out of seclusion. In the face of the enemies of the seven major forces, although the people of the Haoranzhen sect were at a disadvantage, they were not afraid, but they didn't have much confidence. Now that Yi Tianzong had come out of seclusion and came to Xianyun City, the sudden burst of momentum reminded many of the older Haoran disciples of the familiar feeling of being suppressed and dominated by Yi Tianzong. They immediately realized that Yi Tianzong had come to Xianyun City. Yi Tianzong's sudden burst of power gave all the people of the Haoranzhen sect in Xianyun City unprecedented confidence. The solemn atmosphere was swept away, and the people of Xianyun City once again recovered their high fighting spirit and fearless spirit. Just as the people of the Haoranzhen sect regained their confidence because of Yi Tianzong's arrival, on the other side, in Guli City and Fian City, where the seven major forces were located, the super forces sent experts such as Wu Zun, King Wu, and Marquis Wu to the two cities one after another. After 7 years of stalemate, the super forces had long since lost their patience. In order to conquer or even destroy the Haoranzhen sect as soon as possible, the super forces finally hardened their hearts and sent at least one expert from Wu Zun to lead a group of King Wu and Marquis Wu to the Hao-Ranjin sect. 7 days quickly passed. During these 7 days, the forces sent by all the superforces had gathered in Guli City, which was facing Xianyin City, and Fian City, which was facing Jinluo City. At this moment, over 100 experts from Wuzun, over 800 experts from King Wu, over 2,000 experts from Marquis Wu, and over 3 million people below Marquis Wu had gathered in each of the two cities. Their strength was abnormally strong, far surpassing the strength of the Hao-Ranjin sect. During the 10 years that Yi Tianzong had been in seclusion, apart from the 32 Wuzun that had walked out of the Hidden Realm, the number of King Wu and Marquis Wu that had died in the Hao-Ranjin sect was slightly more than the number that had advanced. Currently, there were over 100 experts from King Wu realm and over 300 experts from Marquis Wu realm. Compared to 10 years ago, the number of high-level experts from the Hao-Ranjin sect had decreased slightly. The number of Haoran disciples below Marquis Wu realm had exceeded 500,000. Including the number of people from the Haoran courtyard, there were less than 2 million people left. Over 5,000 Wuzong disciples had died in the hands of the enemy, Marquis Wu. It could be said that the losses were disastrous. Compared to the over 200 Wuzun, over 1,600 experts from King Wu realm, over 4,000 experts from Marquis Wu realm, and over 6 million people from the 7 major factions, the strength of the Hao-Ranjin sect was much weaker. From this, it could be seen that all the super factions that were wary and hostile of the Hao-Ranjin sect were determined to completely destroy the Hao-Ranjin sect and throw it into the abyss of eternal damnation. In addition, during the years that the Hao-Ranjin sect and the 7 major factions had been fighting the Demon Sword sect, Shurigate, and Jinbu Gate, which had previously been crippled by the 7 major factions, took advantage of the fact that the Hao-Ranjin sect was too busy to fend for themselves and invaded the territory of the Hao-Ranjin sect, which covered an area of over 2,000 li, including dozens of cities,